Welcome into the weekend edition here, the NBA Deeper Dive, as we're going to take you live before lock, following us right up until this 9-game slate locks. But you'll have plenty of questions answered, direction, and in this case, for the next hour, you get to tap Rinpack's brain, which is always a great thing, where we don't really ask much in return, right? Except you hit that thumbs up button, you're subscribed, and if there's anything at all that Rinpack needs from this first game out there on the gridiron, like an anytime TD or any type of alert like last week with Tyreek, make sure you help this man out, all right? Because now you are reciprocating back. Tyler's here for like his 15th show today, so we're in good hands, my friend.
Yeah, no, excited to be on yet again, another Saturday for the Deeper Dive. And obviously everyone's eyes are on the NFL today, but there's action in the association and there's money to be won. So looking forward to chopping down the slate with you.
Absolutely, man. And we've been dealing with it all year, pardon me, as far as COVID and injury and just guys in and out. And some of it has been volatile. Other times we do have a good idea moving into the slate each night about who's out. So we'll go game by game as we normally do and take it from all angles, from top options to mid, also down to punts, from whatever Rinpack's looking at here. But beyond that, just you mentioned value, money to be made, value to be had out there. Any big overall theme maybe jump out to you tonight, or an area, maybe there's a specific game or two that you're targeting either with or maybe even against the field?
Obviously the New Orleans Brooklyn game sticks out. Significantly high total, Lakers Denver at night. Also a couple big studs in LeBron and Jokic there. Eyes are centered around, in terms of news, Drummond potentially being a super smash play. Joel Embiid doesn't play. Extra usage in Chicago with the injury to Zach LaVine's knee. So there are a lot of moving parts on this slate. It's a pretty big slate. 10 games. There's only 9 games on the main slate, as Toronto and Milwaukee, I don't believe, are on the main slate.
Right, just 9. You're correct. All right, so let's look at this, man. And you mentioned injuries. It's a great place to start here with Portland. Everybody's banged up. On the flip side, no Bradley Beal, at least there with Washington. So where are you starting? Is it just targeting volume, minutes on a Portland side? I'll let you start, kind of look at which team to begin with, because it might even be targeting guys who are out there by default on Portland in this game, or just taking advantage of regular people we see, Spencer Dinwiddie and others popping up on the top of our ownership projections for Washington simply because of Bradley Beal being out.
Yeah, for sure. And both these teams have been dealing with, almost everyone in the NBA has been dealing with the H&S protocols. And more importantly, there's a team that's shorthanded in Portland, taking on a Washington team tonight. Anfernee Simons was away from the team as he had to leave for his grandfather's funeral. So he's going to be playing with a heavy heart today. And him and Nurkic are going to definitely stick out at their respective price tags. 7,800 Nurkic is still definitely in play in a Washington front court matchup. I'm definitely about that. The ownership's coming in around 24.5% if I last checked. And 7,200 Anfernee Simons, that's as high as you're going to see Anfernee Simons. It's probably the highest price tag we've ever seen him in his career. It's contract year for Anfernee Simons. He turned down that extension from Portland, so he's betting on himself, and he's going to have the plenty of opportunity to do so until CJ McCollum comes back. I believe McCollum's coming back very soon. But Anfernee Simons' show, him and McCollum will be leading the backcourt in a couple of weeks, because Dame Lillard, I would be shocked if he returns this season. But both of these guys definitely stand out from the Portland side of things. I really do like Nurkic. If you were to pick one Portland guy to roster, for me, it would be Yusuf Nurkic. Even at that price tag at $7,800, I'd be willing to get above the field on that. Now, looking at the other value guys and value guys in Portland, it's not that appealing, because Simon's coming back. It really muddies the Dennis Smith Jr. experience we had, the Ben McLemore experience. It's not that appealing to me. I think you can definitely be confident in this year's middles minutes, barring any foul trouble, at $5,800 on DraftKings. But outside of that, it's honestly just Nurkic. And if you're looking for another Portland guy to roster, I think I would prefer Little to Simons, but it's a toss-up. It's about what you can do with I believe there's a lot of merit in saving some roster spots for later in the night with the pending news, especially with Joel Embiid and getting DeAndre Drummond play in.
You're right. And if Embiid's out, and kind of look at that position throughout, especially before we get to that specific game, So we can look at it from a hypothetical standpoint. So I imagine that you're going to Nurkic with Embiid in the slate, but you're going to him exponentially more without him? Or is this simply contingent on whether we see Embiid out there?
So yeah, with Joel Embiid being like a later in the day questionable, obviously injury report back to back for Embiid. I don't mind if you have building many lineups, you already have Nurkic in there, and especially on DraftKings and Yahoo, you can definitely find a way to get both Nurkic and potentially Drummond in your lineup. Now on FanDuel, where you get the ability to only roster one, it's fine. I think it's completely fine to go to $7,300 Nurkic. It's a great matchup against Washington. I expect him to play 30 plus minutes. I don't expect a massive blowout like last game, a 30 plus point blowout. I believe the spread only checks in as Washington only 7-point favorites. So I'm fine if you're locked up with Nurkic right off the bat, but feel free to balance out that ownership and potentially give you the option to get some Drummond in your lineups, which will be very appealing on tonight's FanDuel slate, because you only get one in Drummond. He checks in, just to mention it, at $5,400. If there is no Embiid, he'll be a very exciting value play over there for definitely on FanDuel.
All right, make sure you hit that thumbs up button right away. You subscribe here, what we have going on, all three of our major platforms here on Awesemo. And also, just looking at this real quick, I will move to this Hawks-Knicks game, tell you all about this great promotion that we have running on. I did sprinkle a little bit because 56 total threes that Simons has jacked over the course of his last five games, Red Pack. That's hard to ignore. So I got a pretty good deal, 5+ threes on the books, but that may help as far as, and look, he hasn't knocked down a ton in each of these, right? But the volume has been there at the very least. So maybe a better bet than a DFS play.
No, and I've sensed this trend. That I think you've mentioned your threes bet every time we've done a show together. Is that your favorite bet in the NBA nowadays?
You know what it is? It started out really pretty good, actually. And I was on top of things and I was having fun. I like to throw them in on the island games that I'm doing on the Odd Shopper channel that we have here as well. And then all of a sudden it started to cool off a little bit, but I like them. They're fun because there's not a hard number. There's no hook that you have to worry about. You can control it 2+, 3+. And while there isn't a no bet to them individually, there are other people around them that you can kind of gauge. And then look, some of them will dictate and say, look, there's way too little value to take at 3+ or even 4+ here for Simon. So I'll give you the numbers, right? Simons is +450 on 5+. He's +180 on 4+. So I could easily just place one unit on Simons at +180, or why not have a little fun and stretch it because he's jacked 56 of them over 5 games.
That is a wild number of threes. And yeah, I expect him to continue jacking them. So yeah, that's a fun bet to watch your games with. And yeah, we got to get one of these segments in for you when we do a show together. I want to hear more of these 3+ bets that you have. These are fun to hear.
You got it, brother. I will definitely incorporate. Look, I have them in my head, so I'll sprinkle throughout as we go. There might even be a Sixers one in here for you. All right, let's keep it moving. 9 games and only this hour, so let's keep it moving now. And we hit this Hawks game. Knicks in town. They're a 2.5-point road favorite here. Not that high, as you mentioned earlier, of a total to really attack. But let's start with the road team here. Knicks themselves. Cam Reddish out, Walker out, right? Still dealing with some issues on the other side with Atlanta, but let's just start with the Knicks for you, Rimpak.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on some of the Washington guys before we hop
on. Yeah. Sorry.
No, all good. I think $6,800 Spencer Dinwiddie on DK is an outstanding play. If you want to go over our projected ownership, I'm all about it. And especially on FanDuel, where you can have the opportunity to roster multiple guys. No issues targeting Dinwiddie, even at $6,900, a very nice price tag over there. Definitely my favorite wizard to go to. The Kyle Kuzma renaissance without Bradley Beal has been simply, I cannot even put any words behind it, how well he's been playing in terms of fantasy-wise. 20 games and all things put together, I think I'd be willing to fade him tonight. I think it's been a fun experience. He's been amazing, but if you're building a multiple lineups and you have some of them fall in there, by no means a priority. And I'm avoiding the Washington front court with the insertion of Thomas Bryant getting rotational minutes now. It's kind of a 3-headed rotation yet again. We're dealing with Washington, kind of like taking us back to last year, this time with Trez Harrell, Thomas Bryant, and Dan Gafford. So Spencer Dinwiddie is fine. Good play on both sites. And Let's just check his price tag on Yahoo before we hop on over. Dinwiddie comes in at 29, not as appealing as he was on the other two, but I have no issues going there. Portland's I'm not worried about the matchup at all for Portland and Dinwiddie. So I think going to Dinwiddie as your favorite Wizard is the way I would go.
Looks like maybe you're paying up a little bit more on Yahoo to have him less rostered there in that field versus DK. Would that be kind of a transfer trade-off?
Yeah, that's getting him low ownership, and I think there are much better plays on Yahoo around that price tag that we'll touch on.
All right, so Julius Randle popping a lot, talking about the Knicks here now in Atlanta. He's the one that pops up at least the highest on our boom tool for any Knick out there, and the ownership, even the optimal lineup, that comparison works here. So you're getting some positive leverage. 8,600 though on DK, so we can start with the Knicks and maybe him at the top.
Yeah, Julius Randle, obviously. These two teams are very familiar with themselves as they faced off in the first round of the playoffs last year. And they made amazing adjustments to Julius Randle throughout that series. And that has kind of translated into this year as well. Look, I mean, obviously different circumstances, a playoff situation, and those, but I do think those changes, coaching tendency changes, have affected Randle's upside, especially specifically in an Atlanta matchup. He comes in at $8,600. Obviously, they played Christmas Day, and there's no Kemba Walker there. RJ Barrett slowly but surely racking up more shot attempts for this team. Last 2 games, Barrett has taken 20-plus shot attempts. Last 3 games, and last 4 to the 5 games, Barrett has gone 20-plus shot attempts. And that's pretty nice to get out of a guy priced at $6,800 on DraftKings. Over there on FanDuel, I believe Barrett checks in at, let's just make sure. Barrett comes in at $6,900. I think he's a fine low-owned option. The total checks in at 214, similar to last game, but I'm just concerned of the way they guard Randle. If you want to play Randle on a site, I would go to Yahoo. He comes in only at $33 over there. But Randle's not as appealing to me as he once was. It's just been different for Randle this year. He's not playing like the All-Star self he was. So honestly, the Knicks are not that appealing of a spot. I do think going to Alec Burks starting $5,800, I think is a little too cheap on DraftKings, and I don't mind his FanDuel price tag. He comes in also at $5,900. So in terms of preference of Knicks, in terms of like their big three, it goes Burks, Barrett, Randle for me. As gross as that sounds, still calling them a big three.
No, yeah, they're not even a mid three. They're like an extra medium three. So you can stretch it anyway. Burks, though, 25% rostered right now in that FanDuel field. Granted, it's not a major number that I think would be a deterrent, but just something I was going to bring up because he's the guy you like the best. He's also the heaviest that people are getting to at FanDuel, where you mentioned his price there at $5,900. Are you planning, you think, to be over to that number there, 25%?
I think so. Over there, yeah. I know there's some pending news and things can change, but I have no issues going to Alec Burks at that price tag. I do expect him to shoot better than 2 of 9. I do expect that to get better. I like that he's getting double-digit shot attempts. And we're going to see an Alec Burks game where he just lights it up. He's like one of those microwave players when he just gets going, and it's fun to be on those games when he is heating up. And there have been a couple of those games this year, but you got to love those minutes he's playing. 30-plus minutes. That's an exceptional price tag for the potential upside. You get point guard, small forward eligible on DK. So multi-positional is going to naturally elevate his ownership. But I have no issues if you want to go over on Alec Burks on tonight's slate.
Yeah, man, you read my mind earlier with those 3 props. They're all off the board right now, so I'm waiting. So hopefully before we get out of here, I could sneak that back in. All right, so let's look at the Hawks, right? Because we can move on now from the Knicks, look at it from the Hawks perspective. Not anywhere near the immediate issue as far as like guys definitively out, but how are you playing Atlanta really from Trae Young down?
Yeah, so we just got news a couple minutes ago. I believe Bogdanovic is going to be questionable for tonight, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just make sure. Yeah, I believe Bogdanovic is questionable tonight. So we'll keep an eye on that situation. If Bogdanovic gets ruled out, more potential minutes go to Kevin Huerter. Then we get maybe some extra minutes sprinkled on to Delon Wright. I don't expect him to be anything viable. DeAndre Hunter's minutes seem very safe with no Bogdanovic. He is coming back from injury. It is a back-to-back now. He did play 29 minutes last night. I love the 3K price tag. He just makes everything fit on DK. And the reason why they let go of Cam Reddish is they want to play DeAndre Hunter more minutes. They want to play Bogdanovich more minutes. Cam Reddish was kind of also, rumor had it, he wanted more playing time. He kind of wanted to prove himself. Don't get me wrong. I do think Cam Reddish is a very, very talented player. And I hope things work out for him in New York. And hopefully Zion joins Barrett and Cam over there to form the old Duke trio. But back to DeAndre Hunter, 3K is an amazing price tag. This whole Hawks team is going to come in pretty low owned. If Bogdanovich is ruled out, extra usage to guys potentially when Trae Young's on the court. And Trae Young versus the Knicks, he loves playing well against them. He didn't get to play them against Christmas Day in the Garden, but I don't mind it. 9,900 Trae Young, you're going to expect him to shoot near 20-plus shot attempts, a low-owned guy where he can be one of the highest-scoring players on the slate. No issues if you want to sprinkle a little bit more over the field on a guy like Trae. Also, I believe Clint Capella returns tonight.
Yep.
Looks so like that just ruins the we saw Gorgie Jang start game. Onyeka Okongwu play a ton of minutes earlier in the week. So the front court's kind of man now. And depending on what's the minutes, it's a lower body injury. So Capella might not be on a full minutes run. It kind of just muddies up the front court rotation. Kind of a downgrade to John Collins as well. He was playing some minutes at the 5. It's DeAndre Hunter. Like him a lot on DK. Everyone on FanDuel on our projected ownership is not that exciting. I do think if you want to go to a guy in Atlanta, it potentially should be Trae Young over there, $9,700. I do think you can definitely take your chances on Trae. But outside of that, there's not much appealing value at this moment. Barring the Bogdanovich news, you might open up a few little minutes and usage to some of the guys in the backcourt.
All right, so before we move to our third game, you mentioned that the field not as excited on FanDuel. Are they too excited on DraftKings for you? You find yourself over that number? I mean, right now, and we'll see how this thing changes throughout as we get closer to the slate actually locking, but he's right there at the top, highest owned, projected owned guy on DK right now. Again, yeah, so not the end of the world at 33%, but still, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I would love 30 points. I'm not expecting that. I believe we have him projected in the mid-18s at this moment. He's not going to go 7 to 10. It's just like that's the unsustainable shooting. You'd love it. I'm targeting the minutes to be around 24 to 30 minutes. And look, DeAndre Hunter has always been kind of a very boomer bust guy. So I'll give everyone his bust potential for those of you guys who are listening. A little freebie behind the Awesemo Plus. I think his
real quick. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to take more time doing that. You were a wizard. You nailed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. DeAndre Hunter's bust comes in at 20%. So
yes,
I think if you're building one lineup and you don't want to play DeAndre Hunter, I won't fault you. He has shown to over and over again not to put up great fantasy numbers, but the minutes are great. It's 3K on DK. Opens up a lot for you to play these expensive studs who will be touching on guys like Jokic and LeBron.
Looks like Capella's doubtful, by the way, not looking to play tonight. So,
okay.
Yeah, that may factor in. If you want to just give us anything, how that.
Yeah, if that happens, keep an eye on the starting lineup. We saw Gorgie Jang start.
Mm-hmm.
I played some bit of him, but I just think it's like with Jang starting and Okongwu playing minutes, you can definitely flip a coin and strike gold, but I would want to stay away a little bit with that situation in the center spot.
All right, so we move to Brooklyn here. Pelicans in town, little higher of a total now to play with. And we have to remind you as well what's going on. You've been hearing it on all of our shows for a reason. This is a really cool promo. The Super Wild Card Weekend going on. NFL Showdown, single game GPP through Monday. That's this Monday. Our NFL Express weekly pass is only $1. All you have to do is use our promo code SUPERWILD. One word, all caps, always the theme here, right? One word, all caps, SUPERWILD, and that will activate the $1 NFL Express weekly pass. You'll have access to everything, the player ownership rankings for all NFL slates, everything that we have up there for Showdown, single game contests, our player projections. We have ownership projections up there, right? And then our top plays tool. So you want to take advantage of this. It's there for you. Super wild at checkout, and then you could just take advantage of everything. Use all the tools, the data alongside listening to Rinpack, and it's our nice little way of giving back beyond asking you to hit that thumbs up button, of course. All right, man, let's move to Brooklyn here, and we could start with the road team, of course, and if it's just heavy to the field or looking at maybe, I don't know, Alexander Walker really is the highest guy that pops up on DK because of the low cost at 3,600. So I don't know if you're attacking the Pelicans from the bottom or the top down.
And this guy, Alexander Walker, has been very disappointing. I thought them not re-signing Lonzo, I thought it was going to be his show. And he's been awfully disappointing this season. I've been very disappointed. He's one of those microwave guys as well. If he gets the minutes, I would love him to play consistently in the 30s, but we've seen his minutes just fluctuate from 17 to 27. And it's not the safest value play. He will find a way to get some shots up when he's on the court. But Willie Green has said, I'm going to give the guys who earn minutes. And clearly Alexander Walker hasn't earned minutes. So I'm shying away a little bit from a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I know it's a great matchup. He can get going off the bench, but I want to shy away a little bit just because, he just hasn't shown it this year. There are times where when he's starting and there's no one else around him, he tends to ball out, but it's just not happening so far.
Well, this is a high total. So is it going to be all Brooklyn doing this, or are you looking at any way in which we can take advantage of, and maybe it's paying up a little bit for the return of Josh Hart, 7K on DK, or just trying to get cheaper options like Graham or Jones even?
Yeah, I think Devontae Graham, I like on DK where you get that 3-point bonus. He loves to shoot them threes, and the 3-point bonus for him definitely pans out over there. I think another guy in this game you can definitely target is low on Brandon Ingram. He's finally healthy now, and I think he's an exceptional play on FanDuel. $8,200 is a great play, and I think getting well over the field, I like BI. I'm about it. I like that for Brandon Ingram for sure. I think he's a solid play. And over there on Yahoo, I think the New Orleans player you should be going to is probably either the mix of Devontae Graham or Valanciunas. And I think Valanciunas can have a pretty solid game at that price tag on Yahoo against this Brooklyn front court.
All right. So move to the Nets, or is there anybody else you want to sprinkle in here from the Pelican side?
The Pelican side now.
I figured.
I've been very impressed by Herbert Jones this year. I did not expect this guy to be a starter, and he's been balling out.
Cheap still.
Yeah, and I've missed a lot of his upside games, so it's like he's burned me so much that I don't want to go to him and he's just going to dud. And it's just like the psychology of it. But the minutes are there for him. He's playing really well. Outside of that, it's Brandon Ingram's probably obviously raw points put together. He probably sticks out, but he's a great play on FanDuel. BI is.
All right. So let's move to the Nets, man. And we have the top right here. So 3 guys to choose from. Two. They're at home. So let's look at the Nets from the top. Thought right for the flip side there, but no Kyrie. We know that immediately. So let's look at this from Brooklyn's side. No Aldridge Harris. That hasn't changed there. Irving's still out because they're at home. Is this a top-heavy approach here for you? Or are you going to slide somebody with maybe a cheaper cost associated with him on the Nets?
Yeah, so I think over there on DraftKings, I just playing the studs where they're cheaper. I'll prefer KD on DK and James Harden on FanDuel just because of the way the pricing works out. Obviously, Harden has the bonus potential over there on DK. He's only point guard only. Durant only power forward only. They have lost the multi-position eligibility. On FanDuel, they're all both of them. Sorry, Harden's point guard, shooting guard, and Durant is small forward, power forward. I don't think these guys are priority studs on the slate when there's guys like Jokic and LeBron later at night. And we might have gotten news with the Embiid situation before this game starts. And yes, can one of these guys be the highest scoring players on the slate and immediately be in the optimal / winning lineup? I think so, but it's a great matchup against New Orleans. So I think coming up, getting above the field on Durant on DK and Harden on FanDuel makes a lot of sense. While over there on Yahoo, these guys are very expensive, coming in at $50 and $52. I'd rather want to spend my money in Nikola Jokic later at night, with these guys being priced pretty high over there on Yahoo.
All right, so with the Nets, both of these guys, right, are pretty low owned that we have projected here. Are you looking at pretty much even with the field? I mean, we're talking 11 with Harden and just a little less there, pretty much the same, 11-4 for Harden, 10-9 for Durant. Do you find yourself being kind of equal to that number, or maybe a little bit lower? You mentioned that these guys aren't really high priority studs to get to. So are you thinking even lower to that percentage? And I'm using DK here, of course.
For sure. On DK, slightly lower. Our optimal
Yeah.
percentage checks in just a tad lower for both of them currently. So, yeah, I think coming a little bit lower, I'm fine with that. And also with the decision knowing that I know that if I can wait a little bit with the barring news and then jam in LeBron or Jokic, I just prefer that in terms of just using my salary and spending up. But they're obviously amazing basketball talents. Just on tonight's slate, they just don't seem as appealing as some other guys.
So with this game, and real quick, you mentioned Embiid. I still had him as questionable. Did anything shift on that?
I believe he's still questionable. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Still, this thing's going to come down to the wire. You mentioned though, as far as playing before, I don't know. I would think he's trending, if they can, towards out. They don't want him to play, but this dude wants to continue to try and score as many points as humanly possible and win the MVP on January 15th. So I can promise you that he's putting up a big fight about getting out there.
Yeah, I love Joel Embiid. I would love him to stay healthy and get one of those MVP awards. And yeah, I don't know. On a back-to-back, he played great yet again last night.
Yeah.
Doc
pulled him.
Sorry,
I was going to say Doc pulled him at the end. He had 5 points to get to some franchise record, right, of 31 plus points. And
it's good because I think I had the under on 33.5 points plus assists.
Nice.
And he fell one shy of that, so I was pretty content with that decision.
Good. It worked. It worked. All right. Sorry, brother.
Looking at this Miami matchup, I mean, it's all Embiid is the asterisk, right? If Embiid is out, elevate Maxey, elevate Tobias Harris, smash in Drummond. I think Drummond should see 24 plus minutes. Doc has shown sometimes not to do this, not to play Drummond as much, but I got to see Drummond be playing quite a bit of minutes tonight if there is no Embiid. Seth Curry gets a boost at an elevated 6,100 if there's no Embiid. So a lot of the Philly guys make a lot of sense. And if you want to wait until the Philly news, I think it's completely fine to do that tonight. I have no issues if you want to wait on that Embiid situation and jam in these potential great value plays, great raw projected plays across the board if there is no Joel Embiid. And I think Embiid is a great play if he does play. Like you said, he's trying to carry the team on his back and potentially win that MVP award by January 15th. But over there in Yahoo, I think Tyrese Maxey's an okay play at $21, nothing spectacular. Tobias Harris, I think, is a pretty darn good play already at $31. And if we get no Embiid, I think Tobias Harris should be one of the best higher owned plays and better plays over there on Yahoo tonight.
Yeah. So what happens? You mentioned Embiid and I totally agree with you, right? Like he's the magnet of productivity here. But a lot of these guys, and I wonder if it's Tobias Harris we should look at first here. Somebody's productivity is going to dip, right? Like it's not just going to be zero sum, if that makes any sense, right? Where it's like, okay, somebody's going to come down. So if Embiid's in there, we're going to rush, like you said, to get to Embiid. Clearly that is the play there from the top. But who do you think gets impacted the most to where now there might even be a deterrent to stay away from?
If Embiid is in there?
Correct.
I think I would be willing to stay away from
Harris.
Yeah, Harris or Maxey potentially. I think probably
not Curry though, right?
I like Curry on DK where you're getting the 3-point bonus for him. But I would stay away him from on FanDuel. It's just Embiid just is the center of this team. Everything should go through Embiid and run through him. It doesn't help anyone when he's on the court, honestly. So that's why it's a huge piece of news if he's out.
Man, Curry here. I can get him 4+ at +380, 5+ threes at +1060. And this is still without definitive news with Joel Embiid. So these may drop actually if Embiid is out, right? Because there'd be more anticipated volume there, I would think. So you like either of those?
Who's your favorite Sixer among those guys? Roll with that, right?
Well, I want to take advantage of I can't count on Korkmaz, right? As far as the volume, but to your point about, and look, this is with the bet here associated with it, not necessarily the price, but it's similar here with plus 380 for 4+ and plus 1060 for 5+. But I like the idea of Curry getting a ton of looks without Embiid. But if Embiid's in there, he's the first guy that I would go to that would still benefit from multiple people on Embiid, quick pass out, getting a shot up. Korkmaz as well, but I definitely would defer to Curry over volume. Maxey, I can't trust as much. So that's kind of my reasoning behind Seth, where he's the most bulletproof to whatever happens with Embiid. Doesn't mean he's 100% by any means, but compared to the guys around him.
Sure, I think that's a pretty good point. And expect this. I do expect this to be a competitive game. So yeah, I don't mind that if you're just sprinkling in some, I guess, beer money on Seth Curry.
Yeah. This is not my child's mortgage or college, whatever it is. My mortgage, his college, by any means. What about the Heat here? So we'll factor it. Let's assume that Joel Embiid is playing. Okay, how, if at all, does this impact what you're doing with Miami?
I usually, when Embiid's playing, I do keep in mind like he's the front court matchup over there. I mean, Yurt 7 has been playing amazing pretty much since Bam Adebayo has been hurt. Yurt 7 just keeps playing at a great level. So I think I'd be staying away from an elevated 7K Yurt 7. And even at a Yurt 7 price tag at 6,900, I'd be staying away from him. I think on the other side of things, my favorite guy will probably be, I don't want anything to do with PJ Tucker whatsoever. I don't mind going to a Kyle Lowry, very low on Kyle Lowry, but Jimmy Butler is back in the fold. Everyone is priced as if Jimmy Butler is not in the lineup. So I'm just kind of staying away from Miami. They're not that exciting. There's no, they're not a shorthanded team. Everyone's returned. I think it's fine to stay away from this Heat team.
So how much does that change without Embiid?
Honestly, doesn't change much. I would just be targeting the Sixers. It's just everyone is priced too expensive / too high, and there's better upside on the rest of the slate. That's how I feel. But
yeah, I don't want to push it. It's a low total, so the books agree.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna trust that, and I don't think I'm even the field thinks that as well. So I'm all about just staying away a little bit. If you want to roster a guy, Tyler Hero, $29 on Yahoo's a fine upside guy because he seems to still find a way to get the shots up with no Butler. Obviously not as much. He still found a way to get up 16 last night. So keep that in mind. And that's honestly how I feel. I don't know. Maybe keep an eye. I don't know how Butler on a back-to-back coming back for a pretty significant ankle injury. We'll see what they do with him. If there's some sort of minutes monitoring, he did find a way to play 33 last night. It's a back-to-back. That's all. And he did hit that game winner, if I'm not mistaken. So he might have found his way to liver 11 last night and celebrating that.
Appreciate the super chat, Ryan Nelson 02. That's a quotable. That's a tweet right there from this show. We want to get people eyes on the set. Send that out. Don't put my rent money or any rent money on Curry tonight. All right. So let's go to OKC. Not much higher of a total here. Not much more to expect, but maybe there's a player or two that you can start to target on Cleveland first before we hit the Thunder.
Yeah, Cleveland side of things, we saw Darius Garland light it up last night, which was awesome to see. He's really taken his game to the next level, playing an extra few minutes. We saw Rondo didn't play yesterday. Isaac Okoro was on a minutes limit, and Garland just ran with the show and just took off. I mean, he's priced up at 7,900, took 25 shots last game. I honestly think targeting this OKC team through the front court is fine. Evan Mobley, I really like that price tag. Jared Allen continues to crush. These guys are all playing amazing basketball collectively as a team. They're by far the most surprising team in all of the NBA this season. They have been really impressive, and a lot of credit goes to, I guess, the coaching staff, and Evan Mobley's been an amazing defender. He's by far, I believe, I don't know, he's not the odds-on favorite. I believe he's plus 200 rookie of the year at this moment, but I like going to Mobley and or Allen against OKC. OKC is pretty awful as is, so targeting the front court there, I don't expect guys like Jeremiah Robinson Earl or Mike Muscala or Derek Favors to slow down any of these two guys. I prefer the front court than targeting back court, especially Garland, kind of coming off I want to say he dropped how many 54.5 fantasy points I believe that is his third highest career total. So kind of like easing off the guy who was hot last game and potentially finding who can get hot this game is kind of the tactic I'm taking for the Cleveland side of things. One of these guys is going to be really good against an OKC matchup. So I like going to the front court here.
Is it worth targeting cheaper options, even on DK, who aren't really hitting any ownership like Markkanen or Stevens?
Man, Larry Markkanen, all he does is piss me off. But the upside hasn't been there with Markkanen. On a slate of this size, you want to see a guy at that price that potentially get you 40 points. He hasn't done that. He just hasn't done that. They roll out 3 7-footers, and he just is out there on the wing. If he's your last guy in, I'm fine with it. I'd be willing to look elsewhere. But that's just how I feel about Larry Markkanen right now.
All right. So Thunder, let's move to the Thunder then. If you're top heavy on the Cavs, that's a good thing. And basically you go with what you trust and then we go with what you trust, right? So we trust you. That's how the whole thing works. So let's move to the Thunder and start there.
Man, I am not about this Thunder team at all at these price tags, especially on DK. There's a guy. Sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, SGA through the roof.
Yeah, 8,700 obviously came off of an amazing game against Brooklyn a couple of nights ago. 11 of 18, 9 of 10 of the line against a tough Cleveland defense. I'm shying away a little bit from this whole OKC team today. I don't mind Giddey at 6,700. He's elevated, but he just fills up the stat sheet in so many different ways, getting more active offensively as well. But I'm shying away from this OKC team. Cleveland's a pretty darn good defensive team this year. So I'm shying away from OKC kind of across the board. I see Trey Mann potentially getting ownership. Yeah. Man, that sounds gross. I'd be willing to stay away at this moment. I know the minutes in the low 20s. Yes. I just can't. He doesn't take enough shots. It's pretty gross.
Oh my goodness. 9.1%. So there are people out there that are taking that risk by all means, but you just heard Ridpack. If he's not putting his rent money on Curry 4+ threes, I imagine you're not putting milk money on Trey Mann tonight.
No chance.
Is Giddey just a cost thing there? I mean, you can get some leverage, I'm sure, with ownership.
For sure. And 7,400, that's a pretty expensive right now. He's shooting a lot more than he has, 8 of 15, 8 of 17. I've been very impressed by Josh Giddey himself. He seems like him and SGA are the future over there in OKC, but I just want to stay away from OKC. If you want to sprinkle in some cheaper, we've seen another guy been getting a lot more minutes of late is Darius Bazley. Minutes have gone from like the high teens to like anywhere from the low 20s to 30 minutes. So if you're looking for a low-owned tournament dart in multiple lineups, Darius Bazley is not the worst option. But I just want to stay away from OKC the way things stand right now.
All right. I did see a question, Dort, on FanDuel, so I don't know if that changes moving over to FanDuel at all.
Dort, 5,700. It's fine. I prefer Alec Burks at a similar price range. He's option 3 on this team in terms of shot volume, it feels like. He does get up double-digit shot attempts consistently, which is nice. But outside of that, he's okay. I just prefer guys priced around him a little bit more than him.
All right, let's let Clippers Spurs see that tight line there on the road, 218, so we can start to work with a little more flexibility next couple of games here. So we end with that another dud as far as the total is concerned. But we have 3 here, juicy ones, as we wind down 20 minutes away, live before lock coming your way up at the top here. And then we have Saturday Showdown. So we have a lot of content here still for you. Let's start with the Clippers. As mentioned, tight dog on the road. Bunch of guys have been out, but anything here jump out? Are you at least attacking this with a higher total?
On the Clippers side of things, I've been chasing Reggie Jackson ever since Paul George has been out. Maybe he's dealing with the quote-unquote COVID fog since he was in the health and safety protocols. But I just think Reggie Jackson's should be shooting 15 to 20 times a game. So I like going to Reggie Jackson tonight. So I have no issues going to him. And then Marcus Morris, 6,700. He kind of did screw over Popovich and Rich Paul. So there's a little narrative there if you're looking for it. So I think Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris are fine options. I'm willing to get over the field on both of them on FanDuel and DK, especially Jackson at $5,300 over there on FanDuel is a very appealing price tag. Both of these guys check in pretty solidly also on Yahoo. Morris, especially $22 at the Yahoo price tag. I like Morris there. I expect Morris to shoot almost high teen shot attempts per game, play it north of 30 minutes. But those two guys definitely are very exciting to roster.
What about the middle pack here, if you will? You've got Zubac, Batum kind of in that 4K range on DK. And then you really have Man also a little higher than that at 4,800. Still high single digits, but still single digit ownership projection for all three of these guys. So I don't even know if you're getting to them as much as that in the field.
If it can avoid foul trouble, I would love it. As soon as he gets like two first quarter fouls, Tyler doesn't put it back in the game. And it's really annoying. I've been over the field on him quite a bit. And I don't expect him to potentially Jakob Poeltl not playing. And we might get Jock Landale, who will touch on. But yeah, I think Ivica could be a nice low-owned guy, but it's a center spot. By at this point, we'll know if Drummond is in or not. So if you're looking to like get onto a low-owned center at the end of the night, maybe a night slate play, Ivica's fine. I think Ivica's a fine guy to go to. The upside of playing 25 minutes and putting 35 fantasy points is there. Tournament only. That's how I feel about Ivica. But keep in mind, his floor is literally one fantasy point, as we saw a couple of games ago.
Yep. And the other guys stay away?
Yeah, I think it's Reggie Jackson and Morris are the class of the Clippers, and then everyone else are meh, not too exciting.
So before we get to the Spurs, I know people are coming in by the minute. So new faces, new eyes on the show. We appreciate you hanging. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button, please. And we do have that Blazers and Wizards game ahead of time. So Andrew Martinez on the chat asking if it's okay to fade the first game, wait for later news. I know we talk about that kind of linear as we come in, go game by game. So for the folks that have come in a little bit later on the show, we appreciate everybody hanging. Just kind of recapping a little bit of how you're approaching this slate with that one game starting.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of counter back and say, depending on your risk tolerance, right? So if you're okay potentially sacrificing that game, there are guys who can put up 50 fantasy points in that game. Guys like Dinwiddie, Nurkic are guys who can put up 50 fantasy points in that game. And you got to be okay with it. Like, okay, I missed out on that, and potentially let me try to recover from that. And a guy like Dinwiddie is coming in with significant ownership, as is Nurkic. So if you're building multiple lineups, I wouldn't recommend a full fade. I would recommend like fading like the low owned guys and potentially waiting on other news, but because there are some good plays in that first game. So I wouldn't recommend a full fade, but it's on your risk tolerance. And like, if you were like, okay, I'm okay. I am okay completely. If they pop off, I'll still recover. And if you think that's going to happen, that's all right. Cause there will be a huge advantage with ownership potentially later at night if we get the news to break the way you're hoping it would. Now, if it doesn't, you kind of like, man, just move on to tomorrow potentially. So it's up to your risk tolerance is how I would portray that. Some days my risk tolerance is higher. Some days my risk tolerance is lower. It's something that fluctuates day in, day out. So I would say that it's depending on your risk tolerance. And because there are some guys who mathematically look like pretty rock solid plays in that first game.
All right, so let's hit the Spurs here before we move on. And you've got Murray as the pay up option, and looks like Poeltl's out, or not playing. So you've got a bunch of cheaper options that the field is getting to. I imagine the price you mentioned as far as the Nets not really being appealing pay up options. So I don't know if Murray is in that category for you as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the Poeltl news just yet. I believe he's still questionable, or is he doubtful?
I thought he was doubtful, but
he's doubtful.
Okay.
He is doubtful, I believe, right now. So I believe he's dealing with the back.
Bilateral back tightness. That can't be good for any human being.
That's the terms to avoid the back-to-back fine, right, from the NBA. But the center position is going to be interesting here because it's going to open up minutes for a Jock Landale, open up minutes for Drew Eubanks. In the Clippers matchup, I'm just going to wait for it and see who starts, and I'll go there because I'm not sure what Popovich is going to do. I will have interest in whoever starts, and it'll become a great play at that point. Both priced pretty appropriately. Landale comes in at 31 and Eubanks 3K. Landale is, I believe, an Australian player, played really well in the Olympics, showed some upside there. I don't mind going to Landale at all. So I honestly would prefer Landale to start. I just think we might see extended minutes from him. There are games where he has put up 30 fantasy points in 17 minutes of play on very effective shooting, but we'll see what he ends up doing between Eubanks and Landale. One of them I do think can be a very great play when they're starting. With no Pirtle there, I don't expect Popovich to go super small. I don't think we'll ever see Keldon Johnson play the 5 outright, but potential and more rebounds can go his way at power forward, 5,200. Coming in with some ownership right now, I expect him to potentially play 30-plus minutes in this matchup. I like him on 5K on FanDuel as well. He's a pretty strong play. Dejounte Murray has been a stud all season long. Been amazing to see this growth without DeMar DeRozan there. He is a rock solid play as well. And these guys are priced. Guys like Keldon Johnson is only $18 on Yahoo. I think you can definitely be willing to take your chances of getting above the field on a guy like him tonight.
Yeah, cheap all around, really. I mean, above the field, he's only at 0.6% even owned on DK. So seems like you can be over the field across the board on him and still not spend a ton.
Yeah, and I think his price in the mid tier pretty affordably, where I think his floor is pretty solid, and I'll pull up his boom bust potential and see what comes up for Keldon Johnson right at this moment. Yeah, we are actually
23?
getting a little negative leverage if you play him. So actually, he's not
maybe a lot, right?
Sorry,
maybe a lot of negative.
Yeah,
leverage.
So I might have to reconsider that play as I dig in a little deeper with our data. So it's always important to, if you're not sure about something, refer to the data and make that data informed decision, especially over here on our boom bust tool. So maybe not as great of a play as I thought, but this can easily change based on that starting lineup. So definitely the data is going to shift throughout the night.
All right, let's look at the Bulls here. We know about LaVine's situation. So how you attack Chicago really from the top?
Yeah, how do I attack Chicago from the top? Immediately, I want to go to DeMar DeRozan at $8,500. I think the shot attempts could be almost 30. I don't expect them to get clapped like they did last night. These teams are on a back-to-back. DeMar DeRozan power forward only, but getting above the field on DeRozan makes a lot of sense for me. I like going to DeMar today. I think he's a pretty awesome play, even on FanDuel. 8K, DeMar DeRozan has been great all season long. Now, if you don't like DeRozan, I advise to potentially take your chances on a Kobe White or Nikola Vucevic. I just think there's so much usage that's going to be spread around on this team. And we know that I believe Lonzo Ball has been ruled out as well. So the Kobe White and Vooch make for exciting plays. Chicago is going to be a popular team to target. Getting above the field on a Chicago team seems pretty awesome to do today. Another guy who's been going to have to play a lot of minutes after Derrick Jones hurt his leg is Troy Brown Jr. He's not the most exciting fantasy guy, but he's sharing the court with a DeRozan and Vooch, so he's like option 4. Even Kobe White, he's like option 4 on this team. But if you're looking for a 3K pivot off of DeAndre Hunter, and for some reason, if you want a roster in a mega stud lineup and you jam in both of those guys, and Hunter and Brown, to just get all the studs that you want, go for it. But just be aware, he's as a boomer, as busty of a guy you can get. He's all over the map in terms of fantasy consistency.
All right, let's hit the Celtics and start there with Tatum, Brown. How often you're getting to those guys from an individual standpoint?
Yeah, they were both awfully disappointing last game out. I think they expect them to bounce back tonight. I expect Tatum and Brown to always consistently shoot around 40 shot attempts per game. The ball should go through them. Marcus Smart remains out, so Tatum and Brown seem awesome to go to. For some reason, Al Horford is getting a lot of ownership. This guy has been absolutely dog shit the last week and a half. He's been awful fantasy-wise. This guy has not surpassed like 30 fantasy points, let alone 30 minutes in the last 4 games. So Ime Udoka and the coaching staff had mentioned something early in the week that their assistants are trying to play to players' strengths. Maybe Al Horford is absolutely washed after a strong start to the season. So I want to stay away from that Al Horford ownership. And if it burns me, which on a back-to-back, it certainly might, but I would rather stay away and look elsewhere outside of Al Horford. Projections are going to love him, but something is up with the new rotation there in Boston for Al Horford. So it's something that probably have to ping Alex and talk to him about why he's still projecting so great, even after some rotational change of late.
Yeah, I mean, he's at 12%, but everybody else really coming down single digits, low single digit percentage. So it looks like the field maybe as a whole staying away more from Boston than not. Brown, we have it single just at 4.5% now, just under 5, pardon me.
Yeah, and both of these guys have tournament winning upside. I've been trying to get above these guys, above the field. Probably sticker shock seeing Jaylen Brown above 9K, but there has been a change in the offensive scheme there a little bit over the past week. So they're trying to get both of these guys to shoot more shot attempts. So I'm willing to get above the field on guys like Brown and Tatum on tonight's slate.
All right, hit the Lakers or anybody else that we need to uncover. Sounds like we're pretty good on the Celtics squad, yeah?
Yeah, let's keep going.
All right, so mention LeBron. We've been talking about as far as big pay-up options or ones that you want to stay away from, and you mentioned and referenced Embiid and LeBron and Embiid. So now we get to look at LeBron. How much to the field do you anticipate being really with James?
So I will not be shocked if we see Dwight Howard start against Nikola Jokic. Dwight Howard has been a thorn in Jokic's side dating back to the conference finals. And he definitely gets under Jokic's skin, as he does with many people. But Dwight Howard is someone who can be an exciting tournament play if you think Dwight Howard might get the start. I know we haven't seen him start in some time, and they've gone full send with LeBron at the 5. So I mean, it's going to be exciting to see LeBron trying to contain MVP Jokic. Jokic has been a stud all season long. So that's why I'm a little hesitant with LeBron. I prefer Jokic to LeBron James. It's not a hot take. Jokic is 12-6, but he has the upside to put up 70, 80 fantasy points. We haven't seen it in a couple games, but going right back to Jokic, no issues whatsoever. They haven't played this season yet. So keep in mind in that situation over there. And especially on FanDuel, I think it's pretty. It wouldn't be too hard to get above Jokic on the with to jam him in your lineup. I think there's enough value to find a way to get there. So
Russ, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of Russ Westbrook, the NBA arenas are just trolling this guy.
It's amazing.
He's become a walking troll on Twitter. There have been some amazing memes that we've seen on Twitter. I mean, I don't know if we can even I have no idea how what he's gonna need to do to turn things around. He's been so bad of late.
It's rough.
And he's not. DK is he's been bad, but he hasn't done anything for us to drop his price tag to how poorly he's been playing. Lakers guys are priced appropriately. There is some injury news in this game with no JaMychal Green, I believe. He remains out. We saw them blow out the game last game. Jeff Green played some extra minutes. And I just want to make sure. Yeah, Will Barton should be playing. He did leave the game earlier against Portland, so he'll play. I'm okay with Will Barton just coming a little bit under the field tonight. It's a Lakers matchup. They're not as great defensively as they were in years past. So if you want to go above on a couple of these Denver's guys, I have no issues. The field is definitely willing to do that as well. So I prefer the Denver side to the Lakers side in this game, but I think the offense, those three guys, Jokic, I prefer Gordon to Barton, but I would go Jokic, Gordon, Barton in my preference on Denver.
Real quick, because I know we're running short here. We have that final game to get to, which we will. Anything you could slide in with Monty Morris, 4,700 on DK? Low ownership. That's why I asked.
Yeah, low ownership, but with low ownership comes low upside in Monty Morris, I think. He's never been that exciting of late. He's, I think, a very good NBA game manager, an excellent sixth man, but he's been pressed in the role to play more minutes with no Murray, no Dozier. So he's fine. I'm not willing to get over the field or anything. If I fall with the field, sure. If I fall a little bit under, I'm not going to lose sleep over it either.
All right, hit that thumbs up button, please. We're a couple of minutes away here from passing the torch over to the live before lock crew. And beyond that, make sure we're going to hit this game here as well. If you have anything left you want to hit Rinpack up with in our final couple of minutes, but really hit that thumbs up button. PrizePicks here. Click that link below. You're going to get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, and we're going to match your first deposit up to $100. So you can do all the damage. You're listening here. All those 3+ plays that I'm giving you there, you can play them on PrizePicks at a more favorable number. So Magic, let's start with the Magic, and not really a shock here, right? Heavy dogs on the road. Anything you want to get to, even in blowout potential, where you could take advantage of a couple of guys on the Magic.
Yeah, we saw the Wagner brothers. Shout out to Michigan, but they both balled out last night, and they won the game for them in an impressive win last night against Charlotte. Franz and Mo just ran the show, and based on that play, it wouldn't shock me. Maybe actually they never want to start Mo Wagner, but I don't know what the ownership will look like if he does start. And we don't have Bamba news either, right? Bamba's dealing with a toe sprain. He didn't play yesterday. Yep. Things can change here. It's a late night game, and there might be value that opens up here. And on the Orlando side of things, I think going to Cole Anthony is fine. I know we saw Jalen Suggs return. Just want to make sure if he's still was it a minutes limit? Yeah. Mid-20s minutes. No one in Orlando really sticks out to me. Some front court value might open up with Bamba, but it's so late at night where we might have already had much better value that has opened up where it might not be you might not be missing out on much if you don't get to a Robin Lopez or even a Wagner starting. But if we do get news, Wagner does start at 3,400. He'll be an exciting value play in a Dallas matchup, but I'm not sure what the situation with Bamba is. And if Bamba were to play, I just don't know what his minutes limit or what his minutes will look like coming off a toe sprain.
Mavericks, we've got Doncic clearly as the guy that's going to separate himself at 11-1 on DK. You're going to spend up anywhere you go here for him. Field isn't necessarily super high on him, at least, looking at just 13.5 ownership percentage on DraftKings. So kind of winding down here, Rinpack, looking at Luka and then maybe everybody else that's approachable here on the Mavs.
Yeah, Luka Doncic is slowly playing himself into shape. Definitely hit the hookah hard in the summer, as you could tell. He was way out of shape there, but I think Luka could definitely be an exceptional play on tonight's slate. I love getting above the field on a guy like Doncic. Has 60-point upside. Going to be a low-owned stud. I prefer Luka more than I do the Brooklyn guys, and he's coming in a little bit similar ownership to those Brooklyn guys, and I think he's a pretty outstanding play at this at his ownership. So I'm all about taking my chances on getting above the field on a guy like Luka on both sides, DraftKings and FanDuel. FanDuel only 10-4. I like that quite a bit. I know there's a lot of studs on this 10-game slate, and Luka has the upside of being the highest scoring one, so that it will always interest me in a guy like Doncic on tonight's slate. And other guys, I mean, we're seeing Dorian Finney-Smith get a lot of ownership. That guy also just pisses me off as well. He's a great basketball player, but man, in terms of fantasy, his initials might be DFS, but he is not that fun to roster in DFS whatsoever.
Fair enough, man. If there's nobody else on this team, again, it's a low total. You have Luka covering so much here. We don't need to stretch or force it by any means. There are a couple of cheaper options, right? We also even have Tim Hardaway. I don't know how much that bumps out at you, 5K on DK.
Yeah, the minutes, obviously, he's going to come out there and find a way to shoot a bunch of shots, going off the bench there. Tournament option only. If you sprinkle in minutes, your last guy in, sure. But it's if there's some sort of late scratch, so Brunson, I don't see why there would be, but he's okay. Nothing too exciting.
Yeah. All right, look, I think we have covered everything as deep as possible here. We've moved around. We haven't forced you to look at a team or a side that you've immediately said has a guy that pisses you off or there's nothing there. So we appreciate you, as always, at Rinpack is how you can follow this man. You should be following him on Twitter at Shander Show for me. Tyler, we appreciate you. He's got 5 more shows to go. So it's been a marathon for this man. Hit that thumbs up button, please, if you haven't already. Ehrenberg, LaMarca coming your way right now with Live Before Lock. And then it's Emac, Terry, who I saw now, is giving you a shout on that all-black cap, which looks nice and sleek in it tonight. So it's Emac, Terry, and Lepre for the Saturday night showdown. Awesome stuff, brother, as always. Thank you. See y'all. Have a great night. For Impact, I'm Eytan. We'll have a great weekend as well.
So it's a. It is the Awesemo NBA Live Before Lock show. A little bit different of a start time. We are starting 9 minutes early today because of scheduling reasons. We've got the football Live Before Lock after this for the showdown contest. So we did a few minutes ahead because we're not going to be able to do the 30 minutes afterwards. So we got some extra time here to hang out with you guys, promote our sponsor PrizePicks. But of course, a little extra time for me to hang out with my guy, Matt LaMarca. Matt, how's your week been going?
What up, old boy?
Yeah.
It's going pretty good. It's been busy. You know, it's a busy time of the year for us content grinders, Greg. You know, we got lots of NFL and NBA that needs to be pushed out daily. So I'm running on minimal sleep. I may say some stupid things on this show. I'm going to need you to reel us back in from time to time.
Something else to address, too. We've got Alexander Byron in the chat saying, go outside and get some sun, you DJ, and save some money, too. Here's the current temperature. Let's see, what is the temperature right now? I'm going to pull up the weather. It's not sun weather.
I went outside today to potentially get a cup of coffee and just immediately turned around and went back in.
It is 9 degrees outside where I am right now. If you think, listen, I know I'm a pasty fellow, but you send me outside in the temperatures right now, we're not improving on that at all. So let me stay inside. Let me bet on football, MMA, basketball today. Get some DFS action. Look at some prize picks. That's really what I want to be doing. Let's go over some of these injury situations because there's a lot of them before we start going position by position. Joel Embiid is questionable. Mo Bamba is questionable. Derek White questionable. He's been questionable because of condition. He's been out of health and safety protocols for like a week now. Still questionable every game. Bogdan Bogdanovic questionable. Isaiah Hartenstein questionable. Carmelo Anthony questionable. Danilo Gallinari questionable. Austin Rivers questionable. Obviously, the most important one is Joel Embiid, and that's one that I think people are potentially going to have to make a decision about, well in advance how they're going to be approaching it. With Embiid being questionable and downgraded fairly recently, how are you viewing that situation with the Sixers?
Yeah, I still have some Embiid exposure. The good thing about Embiid today is he doesn't really stand out as a core play. Like, even if we knew he was going to be a full go, he's not somebody that I would have all that much of. So I think, giving yourself a couple shares here and there is fine with the, ability to pivot potentially. But I'm a little bit more heavily invested in Nikola Jokic, who I have been more heavily invested in all season.
But from the other standpoint, too, I mean, if Embiid's ruled out, it creates a whole bunch of usage and playing time that's available. I assume that there's going to be, certainly some part of us that wants to get to Tobias Harris, Tyrese Maxey with increased usage. Andre Drummond would be starting at center. He would become more of a viable option. Right. Is there any space you're leaving yourself for swapping onto these guys in the case that Joel Embiid isn't able to play?
Yeah, I do think you have to explore that route, right? I mean, I've got Tyrese Maxey as like a pretty strong play, even if Embiid is in. So he's somebody that I already have some exposure to. The guy is Drummond, right? If Embiid is out, you kind of want to get to Andre Drummond. We saw during the end of Drummond's tenure as a starter, his numbers kind of decreased a little bit, but he's still going to be able to pay off a $4,700 price tag if he's starting. Even if he doesn't give us the 60 fantasy point game that we've seen from him at times with Embiid out of the lineup, he would just become like a slam dunk at this price tag. So you do have to leave yourself some outs there.
All right, let's start going position by position now. And I think the first thing to really start talking about here is going to be the Zach LaVine situation, because he's been ruled out for Chicago, and not terrible news, but not the best news either we got out of Zach LaVine. He's going to be reevaluated last week. It was something that appeared like it could be fairly significant when he first got injured last week. I guess we'll assume he's going to be out a couple of weeks, but at least for now, the pricing algorithm has not really had the time to adjust for it on FanDuel or DraftKings. So with LaVine out, how are you viewing some of the Bulls guards being, Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, or any potential value guys? Who are the priorities for you in DFS without LaVine in the mix?
Well, Lonzo's out too. Lonzo.
Oh, whoops, my bad. I didn't mean. So I'll read off the full injury. Derek Jones, Lonzo Ball, Patrick Williams, Zach LaVine, Javonte Green, Alex Caruso, Tyler Cook. So a lot of players out for Chicago overall. With this being the injury report, who are the players that you're gravitating towards the most from Chicago?
Yeah, I think certainly we'll get to the studs at the other positions, but I think Kobe White you can, he should definitely move into the starting lineup, play a solid handful of minutes. And we've seen White in the past kind of thrive when given more offensive responsibilities. Even if he doesn't see a usage bump, he's averaged 0.88 DraftKings points per minute over the past month. You give him 30 plus minutes, he'll pay off this price tag. So I think he becomes a strong option. You can look at Desunmu. We have him projected for 33 minutes and he's only 3,400. He stands out as a nice value. So those are the two backcourt options. It wouldn't shock me if both guys started today. And if that's the case, certainly they're going to be in play.
I think we're going to see a starting lineup of Desunmu, Kobe White, Troy Brown Jr., DeMar DeRozan, and Vucevic. It's a thin team. Projected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a thin team. It's not usually the Bulls team, at least coming into the season, we're looking at all the players they had, and it was kind of uncertain how these guys were going to mix together, how the usage would shake out. The team has been the nuts, basically, in terms of however you projected Chicago. This has been the best possible outcome for them in terms of how the pieces would mesh. And they haven't even gotten the best possible outings out of Vooch. But that aside, now we've got a really thin team where it's going to have to be a lot of Vooch, a lot of DeRozan, who at last I checked was projected to be the most popular player over on FanDuel, which, yes, still the case. 37% projected ownership for DeRozan over at FanDuel. On DK, he's projected to be a little bit less popular, 18.2%. By the way, people complaining about positions in the YouTube chat. Catch this one. DeMar DeRozan, power forward only on DK. On FanDuel, he is shooting guard, small forward. So we're really running the whole gamut of positions here. Also, one of the reasons why he's a lot more popular on FanDuel than DK. But how do you view him when you look at him with 37% ownership on FanDuel? Do you think it's warranted without Levine, or is it about fair, too high, too low? Where are you at with it?
I think it's definitely fair. If you look at his numbers with Levine and Lonzo off the court this season, his usage rate is up over 41%. So lots of scoring upside. He's become a little bit more of a complete player. Over the past few years, he can get some rebounds and some assists now. The fantasy production is still probably not quite what you would expect for a guy with a 41% usage rate. He's averaging right around 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. Certainly not a bad number, but it's also not an elite number. So I think I really think you can make a case for him either way. I really like him tonight. I think he's just going to have to do so much for this team, but there are some potential, red flags, especially this being the fourth game in 5 nights for the Bulls.
Yeah, that's something else to consider also, that potential fatigue in the mix, but there's so much usage and playing time available that I tend to just lean towards saying that DeRozan is somebody to build lineups around anyway. The other chalk piece to talk about here, I don't understand why his salary has not gone up yet, but Spencer Dinwiddie has a really good matchup against the shorthanded Portland Trailblazers team. Bradley Beal has been in the health and safety protocols now for I don't know, like a couple of weeks or something. Well, he was in, he was out, now he's back in. But either way, not playing tonight. There's no Bradley Beal, no Davis Bertans, that being less significant. Spencer Dinwiddie's numbers this year really, really strong when Bradley Beal's off the court. He's somebody who I don't think has been priced appropriately on FanDuel or DraftKings. Once again, somebody who's going to be popular. We've got Dinwiddie coming in at 29% on DK. Over on FanDuel, he is projected for 26.6% ownership. One thing that's kind of nice about this slate being bigger with a lot of options, there's no crazy chalk plays. DeRozan is the only player on either site projected for over 30% ownership. I think Dinwiddie deserves to be a chalk play, but considering that the ownership is fairly mild, I like getting to him a whole bunch again.
Yeah, and one thing that I noticed using the boom bust tool that I think is kind of interesting is that no player on DraftKings has an optimal lineup rate of greater than 20%. So it kind of is a night where it makes sense that the ownership is a little bit spread out. That said, I agree. I think Spencer Dinwiddie is just significantly too cheap. Coming off of a somewhat pedestrian performance in his last game, just 30 DraftKings points, but in 8 games without Bradley Beal this year, 43.5 DraftKings points per game. So give me that all day of the week, right? That's close to 6x upside for more, even though he's coming in as one of the most negatively leveraged plays on the slate, I still have plenty of interest in him.
Yep, that's where I'm at with him too. And once again, I really don't find the ownership to be that problematic with anybody. The only player, like I said, that's really popular, at least in terms of like normal ownership, how I view it, it's DeMar DeRozan over on FanDuel. And it's really not a number that I think is all that problematic. Let's talk about some of the pay up options at guard, because I'm finding this slate to not really be one where I'm spending up all that frequently, other than once we get to Jokic at center, he's a different situation. But talking about guards, forwards, unless we're calling DeMar DeRozan a real spend up option, which considering his price point, I don't really think of him as one. He's more like upper mid tier range. There aren't that many super expensive guys that I'm paying up for today on FanDuel or DraftKings. Do you see it any differently?
I have some of these top guys in my player pool right now. Luka Doncic to me stands out as a strong option. Usage rate of at least 40.5% in back-to-back games, 38.6 the game before that. So obviously plenty of scoring upside. We know he's great at racking up the peripherals too. Solid matchup here versus the Magic, who are 25th in defensive efficiency, I want to say. And I have some Dejounte Murray as well. I'm just going to keep playing Dejounte Murray until it doesn't work. The price tag is getting a bit prohibitive, but 60.5, 73.5 DraftKings points in his last 2 games. He's the highest scoring guard on this slate on a per minute basis over the past month, 1.62 DraftKings points per minute. And he's not going to be that popular, I don't think. So I have no problem using him once again. It's worked so far. Let's keep doing it.
Is that independent of whether Derek White's in or out? Because so here, just kind of an overall summary. I have not been high enough on Dejounte Murray this year. I've changed course on that over the last couple of weeks, though, especially with Derek White's being out. I've been rostering Murray a lot. I'm currently assuming that Derek White plays today, which just lowers my personal projection for Dejounte Murray. Of course, Derek White's still officially listed as questionable. That could change, but ultimately, somebody's listed as questionable. You have to make it a decision when you're making projections. Is somebody in or out? There's not really an in between, which is one issue with just making projections. Does your stance on Dejounte Murray, is it impacted by Derek White at all? And will it change if Derek White is ruled in, or is it just something like, hey, you like Murray regardless?
I'm still going to have some, even if White is in, because I doubt we see, full board Derek White in his first game back following an absence that's becoming pretty extended. But certainly, we want him out for Dejounte. He, that's a big plus for his stock. You've seen the usage rate has been, upwards of 30+%, 31+% in 5 of his last 6 games. You want that increased usage rate. That's how he's going to pay off this price tag. He needs the scoring to go along with the peripherals. So you make a good point. If Derek White is back, I should probably tone down my exposure a bit, but I still think that it may feel like Dejounte Murray is too expensive at 10-6 on the surface. And maybe with the team at full strength, that will be the case. But right now, it's not. He's continuously just beating this price tag.
Yep, fair enough. We'll see. The team is starting to get healthier, and we'll have an update for Derek White. Maybe not now, but at least some point either later today after the show ends or during this show. Do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and definitely whenever we get news on that, we'll give updates, and any kind of ownership update will be on that as well. The current ownership we're sitting on, Dejounte Murray is projected for 12% ownership over on FanDuel at the moment. Over on DK, he's projected for 11% ownership. Number that, once again, if that's a number, if Derek White is out, I want to be over that number. If Derek White's in, I'll be underneath it. Talking about some of the other guards on this slate, I think Anfernee Simons is somebody else to talk about for sure, because we've seen with all of the guys that are out for the Portland Trailblazers as of late, we've seen no CJ McCollum. I don't think Damian Lillard's going to play again this season. I've talked about that a few times on shows. Norman Powell's been out. All of the usage in the world is going to Anfernee Simons. He's been a really, really popular DFS option. However, the price has now gone way up on Anfernee Simons. He is 7,200 on DK. Over on FanDuel, Simons is now priced up to 7,500. He's still going to be somewhat popular. Looking was one of the more popular plays on the slate on DK. Do you think that this, I get a little bit of a sticker shock when I see some of these guys who traditionally are not, Anfernee Simons is not a 7,200, 7,500 player on most slates. I'm underneath the field on him, and maybe I'm just underrating how much usage goes to him in these situations, but it's hard for me to play a somewhat popular Anfernee Simons at this kind of price tag. Could you talk me into him?
I think your concerns are reasonable. The thing that I really like, and it's a minor thing, but I like that he has shooting guard eligibility. You know, the shooting guard slate on DraftKings where you can't use DeRozan there, it's a little bit thin, right? It's not the best position. So I'm getting to a decent bit of Simons just because I can use him in that shooting guard slot. And the price tag is high, but 48, 45 and a quarter, 45.75 and 67.5 in 4 of his past 5 games. The only time he's busted, he didn't bust, but it would have been a bust at this price tag, was against Cleveland, who is one of the best defensive teams in the league. The Wizards are not nearly as intimidating of a matchup as Cleveland. I think he's probably pretty fairly priced at 7,200. I think his median expectation, given what he has shown us, should be somewhere in the 35 to 40 range.
Yeah, and well, that's part of my issue though, is we have these slates now that have all this value, and it's not to say that I think the price tag on Simons is way incorrect. It's just, what is the realistic upside of him at a 72 or 7,500 price point on a slate where there are a lot of guys that I really do think are really good points per dollar plays, particularly in this price range. I'd rather play DeMar DeRozan. I'd rather play Spencer Dinwiddie, who are all, Dinwiddie a little cheaper, DeRozan a little more expensive. But at the same time, too, DeRozan's 8,000 on FanDuel, and we've got Anfernee Simons at 7,500. It's not that big of a price gap, and I really do view DeRozan as a much better fantasy producer. There's guys around him that I just project better, and that's once again the issue. I think he's fairly priced when there's a lot of players who are underpriced. Just kind of opening up the guard position to you, whether it be point guard or shooting guard. Who are the guys that are really pivotal, important plays to you that we've not yet talked about? They're making it into your lineups a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, from a value perspective, that's really kind of, I think the amount of value that you want to try and target is going to dictate your approach, right? We've laid out some pretty solid mid-range plays between DeRozan and Simons and Dinwiddie, and there are other guys too. You can build a lineup with all of those if you wanted, but if you want to try and get to some of the true studs on this slate, you're going to need to take some of these, punt plays and put them in your lineup. So at guard, we talked about Dosunmu. I think he's the best of the bunch for sure. I do think Patty Mills deserves a shout. Patty Mills, his role is kind of in flux for the Nets at the moment, but this game being a home game for Brooklyn means no Kyrie Irving. Patty Mills should see a few additional minutes in this contest. We have him as the most positively leveraged guard on DraftKings, so he's somebody that I'm kind of sprinkling into my lineups here and there for sure. Other than that, I don't see a ton of great value at this position. I think the forward spot is the better spot to look for your value and to pay up for some other or pay up at the guard spot.
So here's somebody else kind of in the lower end of the mid-range that I think makes for a really good play kind of regardless, but could stand to become a really, really strong play. Tyrese Maxey is $5,700 on DraftKings. He's $5,600 on FanDuel. Just that information alone, that price point, I say, Tyrese Maxey, I project him for a little over 30 fantasy points. He's somebody who I get to in a chunk of my lineups, just given the current situation and his price tag. And now we have a situation with Joel Embiid is questionable. So I'm already looking at Maxey as a pretty good points per dollar play. And then somebody who has the potential to just really skyrocket in projections if Embiid is ruled out. So that's something that makes me want to get to Tyrese Maxey even more. I think we're not breaking any barriers or busting any doors down by saying play Maxey if Embiid is out. But do you think it makes sense just get exposure to him as is and then just up that exposure if Embiid is ruled out?
Yeah, I do think Maxey has value even if Embiid plays, right? He's played 38 minutes a night plus the last 2 games. My issue is I just kind of this whole tier, right? You've got Maxey at 57, you've got Burks at 58, Will Barton at 59. I think that all of those guys, considering how ownership is going to be spread out, there are some pivots that I'd rather make, right? I go down to Dennis Schroeder at 5,100. He's coming off of a terrible game in his last outing, but he has been a pretty reliable producer with Marcus Smart out of the lineup, right? So like, I think we get a better game from Dennis Schroeder. So would I rather play Schroeder at 10% ownership or one of those guys that's in a similar price range at 20% ownership? For me, I think Schroeder's probably the answer. I have some of the above guys, but even considering the ownership at like 20%, I think I'll be underweight on all of them, with the exception of Maxey if Embiid is ruled out.
So here's one concern I have about Dennis Schroeder. What do you expect from a minute standpoint from him? Because he only played 25 minutes yesterday against the Philadelphia 76ers. I know the game wasn't the closest game in the world, but it's not like they severely limited the minutes of other starters. We still got 32 minutes from Jaylen Brown, 32 minutes from Tatum, 32 minutes from Robert Williams. It's twofold, right? They lost fairly handily yesterday. Dennis Schroeder also sucked when he was on the court, so there's more reason to reduce his minutes there too. Do you feel that comfortable? We see over 30 minutes for Dennis Schroeder because I actually projected him for less than 30 today.
I'm gonna need to see another performance where he's under 30 before I start to alter my projections and stuff.
Yeah, well, here's if he plays under 30 this game, Marcus Smart's coming back next game, then he definitely won't have to consider him anyway. So
yeah, good point.
That's something. Yeah, but Dennis Schroeder, he's been. By the way, you talk about a guy who threw away the bag. Was offered $100 million contract last year, turned it down because he wanted more money. I forget exactly. Maybe it was like a 5-year, $80 million contract, whatever it was. He was offered a very significant amount of money. He turned it down to sign a mid-level exception contract in the offseason and is underperforming and is absolutely never going to get that money again. So something else just to you hate to see it for Dennis Schroeder, our German friend with funny colored hair. Talking about other guys at the guard position, anybody else that we haven't talked about that is an intriguing play to
you? Not really.
All right, fair. So here's let's do a little game here then. If you had to play one guard who's under 10% owned in a single entry lineup today, who would be that guard? Sub 10%.
Sub 10% projected ownership. It would probably be Patty Mills.
That was my answer.
Yeah, it would probably be Patty Mills. I do think Cole Anthony is somewhat interesting, but I wouldn't want to tie a one entry lineup to Cole Anthony. So
for touching on the Patty Mills one, if we look at the Brooklyn Nets situation, we've seen this team have really wonky pricing ever since Kyrie came back, because I think the pricing algorithm just didn't know what to do. It's like, oh my God, here's a high fantasy producing, high usage guy. He's back. He's out. He's back. He's out. I think the pricing algorithm is going to have no clue how to handle Kyrie Irving without some just intervention from a human element here, because we're looking at Patty Mills now, who is $4,700 over on DK. On FanDuel, Patty Mills is $4,900. He was significantly more expensive than that not that long ago. The only thing that's changed is he rested recently. Kyrie Irving came back, but who cares? Kyrie Irving's out today. So Patty Mills, I just think is, like $1,000 or so too inexpensive, and he's not picking up ownership. So I actually have around 20% ownership to Patty Mills on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Somebody that I really like at his current price tag, and considering that nobody's really playing him today. So seems like we're on the same page. Anything else to add about Patty Mills?
No, I think that's pretty fair. One other guy I'll throw out is Ben McLemore. Not nearly the same ceiling as Patty Mills, but he's cheap and he's going to play a ton of minutes for the Blazers.
Let's see. Yeah, I can get behind that. I don't have any issue with that. Any other guards you want to shout out before we move over to forwards?
No, thank you.
Okay. Well, here is something that I do want to shout out. We've got a promo code going on, Super Wild. It is the start of the NFL playoffs right now, and you guys get access to all of the tools we have in our NFL Express package for just $1 using the promo code SuperWild. That is a promo code that's going to expire on Monday, January 17th, so this upcoming Monday. If you guys are going to be playing DFS in the NFL playoffs, you want access to all the tools we have, especially the showdown content we have. Something that I like to use a whole lot is the showdown top plays tool. Something that's invaluable for me when making NFL showdown lineups, projected odds of everybody landing the optimal lineup, projected ownership, what their leverage scores are. I really like that tool, and it's something you get access to using this promo code SUPERWILD. For just $1, you get access to all of that for the next week of football action. So check that out. Stop guessing. Start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. All right, forward time. And we've already talked about DeRozan here. We didn't really talk about Troy Brown yet, who's somebody that I'm getting to at a pretty good clip right now. So the situation with the Bulls, no Zach LaVine, no Lonzo Ball, a whole host of guys that are out for them. I think we're going to see Troy Brown Jr. start. We've seen him start numerous games in the past for a handful of different teams. The guy's bounced around the league. Somehow it becomes fantasy relevant. It seems like for a week once every season. It's Troy Brown season. It's time. And he's not the best fantasy producer in the world, but he's certainly a streaky shooter. He has the ability to knock in a bunch of threes in a hurry. And just the way that this team is shorthanded, I think we could see him play over 30 minutes for Chicago. I assume he's going to start. He's one of my favorite value plays on the slate. How do you feel about Troy Brown?
Yeah, have to like Troy Brown at the minimum, right? At 3K. The big question is how do you rate him, compared to DeAndre Hunter on this slate? We have Hunter coming in with slightly more ownership, but a way worse optimal lineup rate. Brown is at 16.6%. Hunter is at 8.0. That doesn't really grade out in my mind. I think DeAndre Hunter's the better basketball player. He's averaged 0.96 DraftKings points per minute since coming back to the lineup, played 29 and a half minutes in their last game. Do you have a lean? Do you prefer Troy Brown to DeAndre Hunter? And if so, is it just purely because of minutes upside?
Yeah, so there's so many guys that, so a couple of things here. It's going to depend on the injury situation for the Atlanta Hawks. Danilo Gallinari, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Jalen Johnson are all questionable to play for Atlanta.
Right.
If those guys are all out, then yes, DeAndre Hunter would be the preference. But DeAndre Hunter's coming back from an injury. The Hawks have been a little bit conservative with his minutes. This is also the tail end of a back-to-back. So if Gallo and Bogdanovic play, then it's going to be Troy Brown over Hunter. So there's some variables here. As of right now, it is Troy Brown because I have Bogdanovic and Gallo in for the Hawks, but that's subject to change if we get different updates on the injury report.
Okay, I can jive with that. That makes sense to me. One other question is, how confident are we that it's Troy Brown? Is there any chance that it's Alfonso McKinney or someone like that?
Yeah, for sure. It could be. And then I'll just change the players that I'm rostering, do some late swaps, do some adjustments to the projections, and then late swap optimize. Because something else to consider about the slate being 9 games tonight, we have a lot of options to choose from in a lot of different games. There's a lot of value. A lot of players are out. It's not going to be difficult to make adjustments if somebody changes. So I'm not going to be super high on playing Alfonso McKinney if he's in the starting lineup. And I'm going to be off of Troy Brown if he ultimately ends up not starting. But my assumption right now is that he does end up in the starting lineup, if for no reason other than he started yesterday, and that was with Zach LaVine in.
Right. Okay, that makes sense to me. I will have some McKinney either way, just because he's played 19 minutes in 2 straight games. I think that there's a chance that, maybe he sees a bump off the bench. I agree that Troy Brown is the preferred option of the two, but factoring in the ownership differential, I'll have a smidge of Alfonso McKinney just in case.
Do you have any real lean on what's going to happen with the Atlanta situation? Once again, tail end of a back-to-back. There is no supposedly going to be no Clint Capella. He's listed as doubtful. I assume that's mean he's not going to play. Jalen Johnson questionable. He's probably not in the rotation either way. But the big ones here: Gallinari questionable, Bogdanovic questionable. Do you think those guys play or sit?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't think it should affect DeAndre Hunter though that much, right? DeAndre Hunter is one of their guys. I don't think DeAndre Hunter should go from playing 30 minutes to playing 20 just because those guys are back. If you want to say that he's going to be limited on the second leg of a back-to-back coming off of an injury, I think that's fair. I think that's a reasonable concern. But saying that he's going to lose some playing time because Danilo Gallinari is coming back, that doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense to me. We know DeAndre Hunter is a guy that they really like. They love his defense. So I think as long as he's active and there's no report of him being limited, I'm going to have a good bit of DeAndre Hunter. It really doesn't matter to me what the injury situation ends up being.
Fair enough. And we do have a little piece of NBA injury news today. It's not something that's massively important usually, but James Johnson is out for the Brooklyn Nets. And we now have the Brooklyn Nets in the front court. They're missing James Johnson. They're missing LaMarcus Aldridge, Nick Claxton. He was ruled out early in the day. Day'Ron Sharpe the other day for the Brooklyn Nets was a massive chalk play. Did not work out, did not go particularly well. But over the course of the season, he has been a really good points per minute fantasy producer. Now I think we have more concerns about how many minutes he's actually going to play than we had the other day. But with James Johnson being out, does this at all solidify the playing time that we'd see from Sharpe, who I assume will start at center for the Nets?
No, I don't think it solidifies it, but it might give him just a smidge more playing time, right? Like the issue wasn't that Sharpe didn't play enough in the last game. He got 20 minutes. He just wasn't as productive as we've seen from him in the past. So I think you can expect him to be right in that same, 20 to 24 minute range. It's just whether or not you want to bank on the per minute efficiency coming back. And I think that's a pretty smart bet. So I think Sharpe is certainly a viable option at 3,600 on DraftKings, but do I necessarily see him getting to like 30 minutes with no James Johnson? No, I think they would lean more on, like a Kessler Edwards or, even a Bruce Brown, somebody like that, than they are inclined to give Sharpe a ton of run.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I still like Sharpe as a GPP play though, because
sure.
It's so hard to nail down what his minutes are going to be. The range of outcomes is all over the place, not just because the Nets have done really weird things with the rotations, but we've seen Sharpe foul out in 22 minutes in a game a couple of days ago. So I think there's a really wide range of outcomes of those minutes, but at least for GPP, would you agree there's upside?
100%.
Yeah. So, and any other Nets big men that you think are worth getting to?
The thing, maybe a smidge of Kessler Edwards at 4,800 or at 4K, excuse me. I think he could get, a slight bump in playing time, but the Nets are a star-driven team. You don't really need to be targeting their mid-range plays. Like, go with the values. Take Day'Ron Sharpe at 3,600. Take Patty Mills at 4,700, and then take the big guys if you want to. I don't think we need to get much wilder than that.
All right, so let's get back to talking about the other forwards now that we've gotten past that piece of news. And here's somebody I think is a little bit underpriced, and people aren't going to be happy to hear it because he sucked this year. But Julius Randle is $8,200 on FanDuel. He's $8,600 on DraftKings. And I really do like to play the historical pricing game. And the reality is with Julius Randle, even if he struggled a little bit this year, he was over 10K a week ago. The price has gone down a whole bunch. The Knicks are also a team that's not really at full health right now. They did trade for Cam Reddish, but Cam Reddish is not ready to play yet. And then other injuries to the Knicks right now. We know Kemba Walker remains out. Derrick Rose is out potentially for the rest of the season. I have no clue when he's coming back. There's extra usage available for Julius Randle. I get that he struggled this year, but the price is kind of adjusted for it. Do you look at Julius Randle as a good buy low option, or just as his last year, or what he did last year, was it a fluke?
So I don't think that he's necessarily a buy low option. I agree. I like to play the historical pricing game too, but it was so obvious for such a long time that Julius Randle did not deserve to be priced over 10K. And for some reason, his salary just never adjusted. So, to me, that's not real. Like, Julius Randle never deserved a $10,800 price tag. So, I think this is what his right price, like his actual price tag, should have been all year. So now it's like, instead of playing an overpriced Julius Randle, it's a fairly priced Julius Randle. It's not like we're going from, fairly priced to underpriced. So I do think that there's some appeal at 8,600, but I also don't think that this is like a incredible buy low discounted opportunity.
Yeah, what do you think is going on with Randle this year compared to last year? Is it just fatigue? Is it he was in better shape last year because it was a contract season? Is it something else? Because it's not the same player as he was last year.
Yeah, we've talked about this, and you had your theory is that players in year 2 under Tibbs are just never the same because he runs them into the ground in year 1. I think there's some validity to that. Just ask Luol Deng. I'm sure he would agree. I also think he's just kind of been asked to do a little bit less. You've got RJ Barrett taking on some more offensive responsibilities. You've got Emmanuel Quickly now, who is a scorer in the rotation. You've got Alec Burks, who's been like kind of operating as a point guard. So last year it was Julius doing everything. They had, guys like Reggie Bullock just kind of out there to shoot threes. He's not being asked to do as much this season. So I think he still is, a capable permanent guy. He's been a capable permanent guy his whole career. But I also think that last year was an outlier.
All right. So let's talk about some of the other plays at forward, and I'll open it up to you in a second. But there's one guy I really want to pick your brain about because Aaron Gordon is projected to be the second most roster player on FanDuel right now. I'm going to refresh the ownership to make sure this is still the case. And, he's cheap. So it's not like I look at Aaron Gordon and say like, oh, this is somebody who's unplayable. But 28.5% ownership from right now on FanDuel. That seems like a lot for a guy who's generally had not that much upside this year, particularly when Jokic is in the lineup. You look at his game log over the last 2 weeks, he scored over 20 fantasy points once. I get it was a game where he scored 41.9, but still, in general, this has not been a high upside player. What do you think it is that's driving this much ownership towards Aaron Gordon, and do you like him on FanDuel at 5,100?
I haven't played Aaron Gordon, I think, that yet this year, and I'm completely okay with that. I don't feel like I've lost much by not playing Aaron Gordon. I would imagine it's just the injury to JaMychal Green being out, but it's not like JaMychal Green has been this thorn in Aaron Gordon's side all year. Gordon has had ample opportunities to be a factor this season, and he just really hasn't taken advantage of them. So will he see a few more minutes today? Probably. Will that matter? I don't think so. He's not that guy. He's a role player. He does some rebounding. He does some, hustle type stuff, but he's never going to be a primary scorer. That 30-point game last week was just a complete fluke. I have no problem fading this guy. Not even just being underweight. I might not have any of it.
Yeah, and once I have him projected for 26 fantasy points. The 5,100 price tag is about fair. I just don't understand why people are playing him at such a large volume. I think there's better plays to get to on the slate. So I'm fine with passing on Aaron Gordon at his current ownership. The only times I've even brought him up this year is, we've had some games where Jokic was questionable. We thought Jokic could get suspended. There's been times where Will Barton was questionable. Or at first, when Michael Porter Jr. first got rolled out, there was times where it seemed like he made sense. He's just never really come through this year. I thought he was going to be a really good fit in Denver. And I don't know if his game was just so built on athleticism when he was younger, but it seems like he was a better player in Orlando a couple of years ago than what he is right now. So Aaron Gordon.
I just think that archetype of player is just not really useful in the NBA anymore. If you can't shoot, you're just, and like, that's all he's not bringing enough to the table with his jumping ability and all this other stuff that he does. It's just, shooting is so far and away the most important skill that an NBA player can have right now, and he just doesn't have it.
Yeah, that's also something that's true, is that he had like 1 year where he shot 38% from three, but other than that, 32% 3-point shooter for his career. We do have a super chat here from Robert. He's asking for a DraftKings single entry GPP, Nurkic and Tobias Harris, or Randall and Collins.
I would go with number one. I like Nurkic a lot. I don't think that's groundbreaking. And Tobias, you get the potential bump if Joel Embiid is out.
Yeah, so to me, it is Nurkic and Tobias Harris, but you can make a case for the other side. If Embiid gets ruled out, it's Nurkic and Tobias Harris by a pretty wide margin. So give me the Nurk and Tobias Harris combination, and hopefully Embiid doesn't play, because that will certainly set up some opportunities for betting opportunities, and then also just to get some extra value in DFS that I'm not sure people are going to be on. Let's talk about some of the other forwards on the slate, and we've got, let's see, we talked about Troy Brown. Who are the other, refreshing the ownership here? So some of the other popular forwards that we have today to talk about, DeAndre Hunter, who is currently now projected for 26% ownership. We talked about him. Troy Brown at 20%. Jeff Green's actually picking up 18% ownership right now on DraftKings. Where do you stand on Jeff Green, who had a pretty big game the other day, and he's kind of what the Aaron Gordon is over on FanDuel. We've seen Jeff Green start a whole bunch this year. It generally hasn't gone all that well. So Jeff Green this year, bringing up his numbers as a starter, he has now made 25 starts. We've seen quite a big sample size on Jeff Green as a starter. 25 starts, averaging 19.55 DraftKings points in those starts. What do you make of him being popular? Because it seems to me like everybody always wants to buy in on Jeff Green. We've even seen LeBron in the past and some other players be like, oh, Jeff Green's one of the most talented players in the NBA. At a certain point, you kind of need to produce, though. I think that's something that should be said here. But once again, we see one good game from Jeff Green last time out. Everybody wants to get back to him. We've seen this play out 100 times this year. Why is this time going to be different for Jeff Green?
It's not, is the short answer. Yeah, everything that we've said about Aaron Gordon, you can apply to Jeff Green. I mean, at least Green can shoot the ball a little bit. But Denver is just a team that you don't need to think about anybody other than Yusuf Nurkic. He just does everything. Are there times where you can get away with playing like a value play for the Nuggets? I guess, but it's just, it's a strategy that pays off so infrequently that I don't really consider it. You play Jokic, you can use Will Barton if you want, and just call it a day.
Yeah, and I'm looking through. So we had this game from Jeff Green last time out, and that's also what's driving a lot of the ownership, right? He started last game, moves in the starting lineup, has a big game where he goes, oh, Jeff Green's starting again. He's still cheap. Let's play him again. Good results last game. 30 minutes, 29 DraftKings points. Here are his starts before that. 14 fantasy points, 11, 19, 11, 35. That's not bad. But then 12, 18, 15, 8, 18. He's made a bunch of starts this year. 1 out of 10 of them goes well from a fantasy perspective. I'd rather just play other value plays on this slate. So no Jeff Green for me. Who are the other forwards that you're really honing in on right now?
For me, Josh Hart is an always play. I can't get enough of this guy. All he does is produce. He plays huge minutes. He's capable of scoring fantasy points in so many different ways. Subpar game last time out, only 12.5 DraftKings points, but that's an outlier. He's a guy that you can count on for a fantasy point per minute on most slates. So I have plenty of him at just 7.8% projected ownership. I've got some Nasir Little at 5,800. I think he's an interesting pivot off of, like Alec Burks, who's the exact same price tag, expected to be much more popular. But Little has had to take on some additional scoring responsibilities given all of the Blazers' absences at the moment. So I think those two guys are sort of like the low-owned types that I'm looking at the most.
All right, we did just get some news updates here to circle back on for the Atlanta Hawks. Bogdan Bogdanovic is out. Danilo Gallinari is in. So now with Bogdanovic out, this is going to have to change how I project DeAndre Hunter, because I was kind of skeptical about his minutes. I posted this in chat where somebody brought it up where I said, Hunter generally has not played all that much recently. He'd played under 30 minutes in each of his last 4 starts. I think now he's probably more likely to play over 30 minutes. Now that there is going to be no Bogdan Bogdanovic in the lineup. So here are the numbers for Hunter as a starter this year. He's made 12 starts. He averages 28 minutes per game, 18.29 DraftKings points. Now I'm probably going to give him somewhere in the neighborhood of 32 minutes, which is going to have me projecting him over 20 DraftKings points. I had him under that number before. How does the outlook of the Hawks change for you with Bogdanovic out?
I think that's a conservative projection, in my opinion. Again, he's been injured. There's no Cam Reddish anymore. So you factor in a few additional minutes. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as he has been the past 2 games on a per minute basis. He shot the ball well. He was 7 for 10 in his last game. He's been 3 for 4 from 3 in each of his last 2 games. But he has been, a 0.96 fantasy point per minute since coming back from an injury. I think that's high, but I also think his average of, 0.68 fantasy points per minute over the course of the full season is low. I think there's a happy medium there. And if we can get 30 minutes from him, I think he he's my favorite, value play on the slate.
Yeah. Once again, I'm going to give him 32 minutes, and that's going to project him for a little over 20 fantasy points for me. That makes him in play at the min price on DK. And people could come out and say like, oh, that's a crazy projection. He's averaging 28 minutes per game as a starter this year and 18.29 fantasy points. So just given his rates this year, and yeah, you could say maybe they're a little bit low, but in general, I think Hunter's a very good cash game play, and I'm going to get exposure to him in tournaments. I don't view him as some no-brainer play because he's sucked for fantasy this year. I'm kind of arguing with nobody here because ultimately I like DeAndre Hunter now that Bogdanovich is out. But if anybody's looking to lock button play Hunter, I think that would be a mistake if you're playing a bunch of lineups. When you consider that he was good last game, he scores 30 DraftKings points. Here are starts before then: 4.5 DraftKings points, 16, 13, 21, 33, 17, 9, 16, 17, 18. He hasn't been great as a starter this year, but Bogdanovich is out. So I view him a little bit differently this year. I'm willing to get to him. I'm just not going to lock him or anything like that. All right, let's talk about some of the, actually we got some super chats here to hit on. From Devin Kessins. I'm not sure if I pronounced your last name right. Kessins, maybe. Malik Monk, Kobe White, or Macklemore on FanDuel. That is Kobe White for me.
Easily Kobe White.
Another super chat here from Clownin01. Wouldn't Yurt7 be a better play than Nurkic if Embiid is out? Only $100 more in salary.
Yurt7 has just been so good. It's probably time that we just start considering him like in every slate play at 7K, because all he does is pay off this price tag, but he is not nearly the fantasy player on a permanent basis as Yusuf Nurkic. Nurkic is just capable of doing so much more. He can pass, he can shoot, he can give us defensive statistics. And that's not always going to manifest itself, right? There are a lot of games where Nurkic isn't going to have to put his full skill set on display. But when he hits his ceiling, I feel pretty comfortable that it's significantly higher than Omer Yurtseven's.
Yeah, I think the other thing too to think about when it comes to Yurtseven, Dwayne Dedmon's back now. Here's where it doesn't matter a ton that Dedmon's back, but it takes a couple minutes away from Yurtseven. It certainly lowers his projection a little bit. Also, Yurtseven was a shockingly good playmaker for the Miami Heat. He was really involved in the offense and facilitating. Jimmy Butler's back. That takes away some of that. So here was Yurtseven's assist numbers in some recent games. 4 assists, 6 assists, 8 assists. Those numbers are not still going to be there with Jimmy Butler's back. So I think I'm really curious to see what happens with Yurtseven when Bam Adebayo comes back, because it seems like Yurtseven has asserted himself as somebody who has to get minutes. You have to give minutes to Bam Adebayo. Dedmon's been pretty good this year as well. Maybe Yurtseven becomes an interesting trade piece for the Miami Heat because he looks, at least as of now, like he's been a really good draft pick. Other super chats here we have from Alden Jones. Favorite forward 3,500 and below, and thoughts on Mo Wagner. So let's handle this a couple different ways. First, who is your favorite player at forward on DK priced below 3,500?
It's hard for me to say anybody other than DeAndre Hunter.
It's probably Hunter for me as well. He's the player I have projected highest to sub 3,500. And what are your thoughts on Mo Wagner, who at least as of yesterday took the bulk of the center minutes from a chalky Robin Lopez? In hindsight, would have been an excellent pivot play that basically nobody got to. But thoughts on Mo Wagner? Could he replicate what he did yesterday?
I don't know if I would say replicate. He was 11 for 17 from the field and 4 from 8 from 3-point range. You're also going to have to make sure that Mo Bamba is out. But if the stars align and Wagner, gets another opportunity to play consistent minutes, he's a good producer on a permanent basis. He's 1.05 fantasy points per minute this season. So you know what? That's actually a pretty interesting pivot off of some of this forward chalk that we've been looking at. I haven't really given Mo Wagner a ton of consideration today, but I may have to revisit that.
Yeah, I could get behind it. Well, also we still need Bamba news. I'm kind of assuming Bamba plays right now, which really changes my outlook on all of the Orlando situation. And we could talk about that when we get to center also, because that could have impact on other guys. We could talk about Robin Lopez and people go crazy with Robin Lopez again. But that aside, any other forwards you want to talk about for today?
No, I think that, I mean, do you have anybody else? I feel like that's a pretty good rundown of my core at the moment.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes on these 9-game slates as compared to like a 3-4 game slate, because when you get these slates with so much value, there's going to be a whole bunch of guys I'm getting around 10% of or something like that. And
yeah,
it's different than like a 3, 4, 5 game slate. It's like, here are the guys I'm playing. But in terms of guys I have a decent amount of exposure to, I think we've hit on all of them.
What about KD? Point. Are you playing KD tonight?
Not in any significant way. I have, let's see, where is he? So he is 11,000 on DraftKings and currently projected for 12% ownership. On FanDuel, Durant is 10.9 projected. I'm a little bit underweight to the field on him on both sites. I wouldn't say he's an outright fade, but I'm underweight to the field.
Okay, that's cool. I will say that I am probably going to be slightly overweight on Jason Tatum. We've mentioned Chicago, 4 games in 5 nights. They're really banged up. They also just have been taken to the cleaners in a couple of games in a row. Tatum's still without Marcus Smart. He gets a slight bump there. I think he's interesting, now that his price has come back to reality, right? Like, you want to talk about a player who has seen a nice price decrease. He was 10.9 on December 31st, and we can get him at 9.3 today on DraftKings. I think he's interesting.
So Tatum, there's other than DeRozan, there isn't. So DeRozan and Jokic to me are kind of the two more spendy options that are on a tier of their own. Jokic always being somebody, if I have the salary to spend up for, I'm going to get to him. And then DeRozan, I think just points per dollar is priced incorrectly with Levine out today. So those are really my primary spend up options. So when you bring up guys like Durant and Tatum, I don't have an issue with them on a points per dollar basis. There's just other guys I prefer.
Sure.
So yeah, nothing else I really want to talk about from a forward perspective. So shout out to PrizePicks, who's sponsoring the show today. If you guys are new to PrizePicks, head on over to the site, sign up for the first time using the promo code Awesemo. Get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit. Also, if you're signing up for the first time using our promo code, you get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. You find all the tools you need to make money in DFS, not just for basketball, but for pretty much every single DFS sport is out there. Also, if you go over to awesemo.com now, in addition to OddsShopper, which is a really useful way to look at all of the props that are available, basically every single sports book that's available in your area, and find the best value on props, we also now have a projections page for PrizePicks. So it's free to use. You go to NBA, drop-down menu, look at the projections, PrizePicks, and you can see what we have as some of the best overall projected props over on PrizePicks and players that we've already talked about. Patty Mills, we have him over 12.5 points, hitting 69% of the time. So that's somebody to look at over on PrizePicks. Somebody like James Harden, he has a prop line of 10 assists. We have that hitting the under 65% of the time. So useful tool to use over at awesemo.com to look at props and then also just find some of the best value on PrizePicks. We have a super chat here from JR, who's saying favorite power forward in the 5K range for FanDuel cash. So let's see.
Power forward, 5K range. Okay.
On FanDuel. So if you're just talking cash games, the answer would be Aaron Gordon. Even if I don't love Aaron Gordon from a tournament perspective at his price point of 5,100, in cash games, you might as well just play the chalk. And I have no issue in that situation, just going to Aaron Gordon, who's probably going to be fairly popular in cash games at 5,100. Is there somebody else you see around 5,000 that you want to get to at power forward?
I don't hate Keldon Johnson if Derek White is out again, but I agree that
Derek White just ruled in as you were talking.
Okay. I agree that it's Aaron Gordon.
Yeah. So, and once again, just you could let ownership dictate some of your decisions in cash games. If you're in between two players, you might as well just go with the chalk because cash games totally different strategy than tournaments.
Oh,
you just want.
I changed my mind.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Play Day'Ron Sharpe at 4,400. He's power forward eligible on FanDuel.
I don't know I could trust him in cash, though. Tournaments for sure. I don't know I could trust him in cash games after he played 20 minutes last game.
I mean, if I knew I was getting 20 minutes from him, and I feel pretty good about that, I think he can get us to 30 DraftKings points or FanDuel points too.
But who would... But so just straight up though, Aaron Gordon versus Sharpe, and we don't have to even consider salary. You're just looking for somebody to play in the 5K range. Would you project Sharpe for more fantasy points than Gordon?
I think it's pretty close. I think that Both guys probably have a median projection for me somewhere in the 25 to 28 range. So I think, I'm playing a little bit. I think one of the mistakes in cash game lineups is not giving yourself enough ceiling. You need to hit like a threshold if you want to really be a profitable cash game player. You need to, have those nights where you sweep. I think Sharp gives us some safety, not a ton of safety, but I feel pretty good he's going to get to 20 minutes. He's averaging 1.15 fantasy points per minute on the season. So I feel pretty good that he can get us at least 25, and he has upside for significantly more.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of more upside in Sharp, but just considering where the ownership is, I would just go towards Aaron Gordon unless something is drastically changed with the ownership projections. Last I looked, another super chat here from Eddie Seja. He's asking best forward on DK. He has 6,300 left. And let's see, where is Sharp currently projected? Sharp over on FanDuel is projected for 14% ownership now, given the most recent news. On DK, he is projected for 17% ownership. I really like him as a GPP play. I think Sharp is certainly somebody to get to exposure to in tournaments, assuming he starts, which I think he will. To Eddie's question, best forward for $6,300 on DK. Let's see.
I think this is kind of a dead spot. You've only got 3 players in that price range. You've got Covington at 6K. Kevin Love is 63. Marcus Morris is 67. I don't feel particularly good about any of the 3 of those guys. If I could get up to Josh Hart at 7K, I wouldn't mind that at all. Otherwise, I would go down to probably Alec Burks at 5,800 or Nasir Little at 5,800.
Yep. Same for me. Burks is the answer. I have him projected for over 30 fantasy points. I think he is the best play in that price range. Update on Derek White. Popovich said that he will play off the bench in his return on Saturday, but maybe on a minutes restriction. Maybe not.
Pop.
Yeah, coming off the bench generally indicates to me that he is going to be on a minutes restriction. To circle back on our conversation about Dejounte Murray before, how do you view him knowing that Derek White is playing, but off the bench and likely somewhat limited minutes?
Yeah, you do have to probably ding him a couple of points, but I don't think it's drastic, right? It's definitely not the worst case scenario for Murray. And again, if it lowers his ownership, that's a good benefit of this news for me. I like Murray. I'm going to keep playing him. So I think, again, maybe he doesn't have the 70 fantasy point ceiling that he's displayed a couple of times in the last month, but I think he can still get us into the 60s, certainly into the 50s, as he's done basically all season.
Super chat here from Adam Palmer. Got in Burke last night. Hope tonight's good for us. Adam Palmer looking for a bounce back. So for sure, good luck to you as well today. One thing that I'm kind of updating my lineups and wanted to circle back on, especially because somebody had asked about it in the YouTube chat, with Bogdan Bogdanović out, with Clint Capella officially out for the Atlanta Hawks. We know DeAndre Hunter is going to be fairly popular today as a value option. Do you like Danilo Gallinari at all as a pivot play now that we know that Bogdanović is out and Gallo will be playing?
Yeah, he's grading out very well in our boom bust tool. And he did play 34 minutes in his last game. It's hard for me to see him getting that many minutes again. So I think he makes sense as a pivot, but he's not going to be a player that I'm overweight on.
All right, fair enough. And we could wrap up the forward position now. And I think we're all caught up on super chats. So let's hit on the center position right now. And something I think we should hit on as long as we're on the Spurs right here is that Jakob Poeltl has not been ruled out. He is a game time decision, but officially listed as doubtful. So I think it's fairly unlikely that he ends up playing today. It looks like we're going to have Jock Landale as a pretty popular play over on DK today. He is projected right now for 29.4% ownership, nearly min price. How sold are you that he ends up being the starting center for the Spurs? And if so, how do you look at him as a value option?
I do think he'd start. I don't know if he necessarily plays enough minutes where he's going to destroy 3,100, right? Drew Eubanks is still, I believe, right? He's not hurt. So they have some alternatives. Let's look. They've played a few games without Pirtle this season, and
Eubanks in other parts this season.
Yeah, it's been Eubanks. So
I
would rather go to Payne.
Here's what's weird about
Sharp,
the situation. Here's what's weird about the situation. So earlier in the season when Pirtle was out, Eubanks was the guy. Since then, though, Landale has been ahead of Eubanks in the rotation. So it seems like that's potentially changed. I'll look at it this way. Whichever one starts, I think is a good value play today. But do you feel any differently? If we find out that Landale is starting, and I'll bring up his per minute rates this year, he is playing he's playing 10 minutes per game, averaging 10.1. He's scoring slightly over a fantasy point per minute.
Yep.
If he starts, I don't know that necessarily means he's going to play all of the minutes, but even if we give him 24 minutes, projecting him for about 25 fantasy points, considering he scores slightly over a fantasy point per minute, how strong of a value option would you view him as if he is in the starting lineup?
I think he's a fine option. I think considering the ownership for me, it's a pass. It's a player to be underweight on. I think that there are paths to him busting, or not busting, but not hitting a tournament ceiling. I mean, you look at the boom bust tool and it's 31% projected ownership, 12.3% optimal lineup rate. So he's extremely negative leverage in the boom bust tool. I don't want to play a chalk Jock Landale.
I think those are generally wise words to live by. Is, well, not just a chalk Jock Landale, but we've seen so many wonky things that have been done by Popovich in the past. I certainly think Landale's still going to be in my player pool, but there are a lot of cheap guys to get to today on GK and then DK and FanDuel. And we're going to talk about guys like Nurkic and Jokic that are also very, very much viable centers today. Would you view Drew Eubanks at all as a pivot off of Landale, assuming that Landale holds his 30% ownership?
No, I don't think, like, the most likely scenario in my mind is one of these guys plays like 24 minutes and the other plays 20. I don't think one guy of the two is going to grab all the minutes. And I don't think that either of these guys, like, they're solid. They're 1.0 fantasy point per minute types of guys, but they're not like JaVale McGee's, that when they're going to play 20 minutes, we can have some nights where we're going to get 35 plus fantasy points. I don't see either of those guys as that type of player. So I would probably rather play Eubanks at his projected ownership than Landale at his, but I don't really feel the need to go to either guy.
We got a super chat here from JR. More fantasy points, Horford or Gordon. That is good. Al Horford, I don't know what happened. Al Horford, he's been washed for a little bit, but it looked like he was a little bit kind of rejuvenated earlier in the year. And oh man, it's been terrible over the last couple of weeks. And just the minutes aren't there as of late, which is something else that makes him hard to project well. So that is Aaron Gordon over Al Horford for me. What about you?
Yep.
Yeah, correct. So pretty comfortably Gordon over Horford. Let's talk about some of the spend up options at center. Jokic is somebody who, whenever you and I have done shows together this year, if it's a Jokic slate, you and I are rostering them. Today's no different other than, I guess it's a bigger slate. There's a lot of value options to choose from. Is Jokic somebody that, once again, you're prioritizing spending up for today?
100%. Yeah, I have a lot of Nikola Jokic. There's plenty of value plays on this slate, right? There's it's not that hard to get to Jokic. You can pair him pretty easily with, some of those like mid-range studs that we've talked about, be it DeRozan or Spencer Dinwiddie. It's not that hard to go that route. So yeah, I think you should do it. The only thing that has really stopped Jokic recently has been a lack of minutes, right? He only played 28 and a half minutes in his last game. If he gets back to his usual, 36 minutes or so, he's just pretty much a lock to get you 55 plus fantasy points. And that has tons of value. The Lakers are also a great matchup. They're allowing the second most points in the paint this season per game. So I think this is a spot where Jokic can definitely get right. Just always overweight on Jokic, always.
Yeah, and then something else to add about this slate, look at how many value plays we have to choose from. We've talked about, we're talking about guys who are nearly min price they're going to start. And even if you don't think somebody like Landale or DeAndre Hunter or Troy Brown Jr. aren't the best fantasy producers in the world, these are still guys who are potentially going to play decent minutes in a starting lineup at close to the flat min on FanDuel and DK. So that in itself makes it easy enough to pay up for some of the stars today. And then Nurkic, I know we got a super chat about him earlier. Here's the deal with Nurkic. He's played 2 games in a row that have not gone particularly well. One was just a bad fantasy outing against the Nets. The other game was against Nuggets. It was a blowout. He played well on a points per minute basis. He played like 25 minutes, scored 33 fantasy points, but they lost to Denver 140-108. Generally, any game that stays competitive for the Portland Trailblazers right now, it's probably going to mean that Simons and or Nurkic played well because Portland has everybody out for them. There is no CJ McCollum. There's no Damian Lillard. There's no Norman Powell. And then you just kind of start to figure out where is the usage going to go to. It's Simons and Nurkic. And then Nurkic at times, his minutes have been questionable this year, but they have no Larry Nance Jr. There's no Cody Zeller. So as long as the game's competitive, Nurkic is going to have to be out there. Those are the 2 centers that I really do like the most on this slate, Nurkic and Jokic. So I know that earlier in the show, I think it was News God had asked if we were talking about Nurkic or Jokic or something along those lines in the YouTube chat. Both of them good plays today. In fact, 2 of my favorite centers. Where are you at on Nurk?
Former teammates.
That is true.
Yeah, I really like Nurkic. I think he's, again, I kind of talked about him just compared to year 7. I think Nurkic is super talented, and he has the potential to be an elite per minute guy on any time he takes the floor. So I love Nurkic. I love Jokic. And just to complete the Eastern Bloc theme that we're going for here, let's throw Vucevic into the mix. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think he could be sort of the forgotten man at the position today. We only have him projected right now for about 12% ownership on DraftKings. He hasn't been the same player this season, right? But he's taken a back seat to to guys like DeRozan and Levine, and there should be a few more shot attempts for him on this slate. And he's just a very good player when he gets the opportunity. So I'm putting him in the mix as well.
Yeah, and we got a super chat here from Ryan Nelson. Will Barton said he'll play Saturday. It was listed as probable, so I assumed as much. But it is nice to see that he said that he's going to play. I'm going to agree with you here on Vooch, just from a standpoint of if we're going to like DeRozan, we should kind of like Vooch for the same reasons. All these guys out for the Chicago Bulls, a team that really had a lot of usage to allocate early in the year to a bunch of different guys, a lot of mouths to feed. Not the case right now with all these guys out. So, I think there is reason to get to Vooch as well. Just one thing is I like Nurkic and Jokic better. If I'm going cheap, I think Landale makes sense. It is a little bit hard for me to prioritize getting to Vooch, but I don't mind being overweight to the field on him. Anybody who's going to be a contrarian or a lesser owned center option we haven't talked about, do you want to close the show by bringing up?
Yes. I think that like Robert Williams has the potential to be like basically unowned today. And we've talked about sort of the deterioration of Al Horford. I think that is to the direct benefit of Bob Williams here. We've seen him in the past be like a per minute monster. He hasn't been quite that guy this season, but he is up to 1.12 fantasy points per minute over the past month. And the minutes are there now. He's playing, upwards of, in the low 30s on most nights. He's gotten to 40. I think that Robert Williams at 6,900, I think the price tag has yet to fully catch up to his role. So I will, I'll get some exposure to him. Center is a tough spot to really like take your stands because you are giving up, like the opportunity to play one of these studs. But I do think Robert Williams is an interesting option.
All right, that is going to do it for us today, guys. No extra 30 minutes today because we do have the football games coming up today, or the game tonight, and big showdown contest across the industry today. So like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and watch the NFL Live Before Lock show that's coming up afterwards. Good luck today, guys.